Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Chatting with Us. This is episode number 83, and I am joined by a guest that has not been on the show yet, but is probably, I'd say, in my top 3 to 5 booktubers that I watch now. Just an absolute gem if you have not stumbled upon the channel Toasty Towns. But I am joined by Owen Towns tonight. Owen, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited to be here.
You know, I have a friend, and they're a huge fan of you. And whenever they saw that you were coming on the show, they're like, I had no idea you knew this person. They're like my favorite channel. And they coined a phrase for you that I think is perfect. And they called you a farm-to-table booktuber. Because you're getting full, organic, raw, like thoughts, one shot. And that is what you are. You're farm-to-table booktube.
It's more like slop to table, but I appreciate the thought behind it.
No slop here, sir. No slop here. And I'm glad you're here because this is an important night for me, dude. Because I'm a new man. I don't know if anyone could tell, but the shades, the shirt, okay? You seeing it? I've been to Europe, folks. That's right. I am an American who has been enlightened to the way of European life. And I just feel, Owen, I know you went to Ireland recently as well. I mean, don't you just feel better than most people after you come back?
Well, yeah, you come back and you're just greeted by the American pigs and dogs, and you just realize that life is better over there. But
yes, and the smells when I came back, I could not, I just couldn't believe it. And you know, it's hard to just look at America after being, you know, raised to the European standard. So I've been wearing sunglasses inside. I feel like it really fits me. And you know, my reading taste has changed. Did you pick up any books while you were over there?
I didn't, but I'm curious to hear what I missed out on.
Oh, at this point, I actually came back. I literally threw every American author in my trash bin. And basically, if you're not Sally Rooney, you're not Roddy Doyle, Tana French, I don't have time for you. You know, you can kick rocks. I'm an Irish only guy now. European, maybe. Maybe I'll stretch outside of that. But you should have went to some bookshops while you're there. They're absolutely all right. I'm going to take all these off. It bombed. I told Owen I was going to do a bit, and I said it would bomb. And it did. So I'm glad I got that out of the way. Actually, Chris,
it could have been much worse. Actually, I was expecting much worse.
I thought about being really inflammatory, but as Bookborn says, I'm 3 minutes late and I already don't understand what's happening. But Chris Reeds, being the Chad that he is, says, "I like this new Jimmy. I do too. I am unfortunately still not a James Joyce fan. Are you a James Joyce fan?
Not. I can't say one way or another. Don't have a strong opinion.
I think that you should, instead of reading any of his fiction, I think what you should do is actually go read his love letters that they published to his wife. It's some of the most heinous, weird things that you'll ever. I don't know why they published his love letters to his wife, but it is some of the most unhinged shit I've ever read, dude. Like it is.
What's it called? What's it like?
I actually don't know exactly what it's called, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And let me just say, James Joyce was a freak. That's all I'm saying. He was, you know, no kink shaming here, but my God, that dude was freaky. By the way, we're having a little bit of Guinness, which is not nearly as good.
Oh, you should have told me.
I should have told you. But let's be honest. Guinness in America, nowhere near as good.
Doesn't hit the same.
It's not even close, dude. I was so disappointed when I came back because I'm not a huge drinker, but I figured, you know, I'm in Dublin. Everyone says it's different. I'll try. It actually was. It actually was different and very, very good. So what part of Ireland did you visit when you went over there?
So we were there. I went with my family. We were there for about 5 days. We were mostly in Dublin. We did a couple of like day trips to the West Coast, I guess it would be, and like the South there. Stopped a lot of castles. Beautiful weather. Didn't rain a single day we were there, which was like extraordinarily rare. But no, it was awesome. We went to the cliffs of Moher on the West Coast there.
Nice.
Absolutely stunning.
That's awesome. I spent most of my time in Dublin, kind of around Dublin. There's some booktubers over there named StoryTube's their channel, but Carlos and Yolanda, they've been friends of mine for a while now. So I basically just spent the entire week with them, which was fantastic. And I went to the Eastern Cliffs, actually. I went the other way and saw some cliffs over there. It was beautiful, beautiful lighthouses and whatever. But yeah, I had a great time, dude. But the thing that struck me was just how many bookstores there were in Dublin compared to every city I've been to in America. astounding how much they care about books. There's a bookshop there that's been around forever. Actually was mentioned in Ulysses, in James Joyce's Ulysses, and it's still there, and it has something like 60,000 unique books in it.
Wow.
Mind-boggling, dude.
Was that in the city itself?
Yes, it was in the city. Yeah.
I did stop by a couple, and there was one, they said they were like the oldest independent one, but it kind of just looked pretty standard inside. And there was like a antique or collector's bookshop that was a little bit smaller. There were some cool spots, but nothing that really caught my eye. I mean, usually when I'm in a country and I'm buying books, I like to buy books like kind of like what you're saying, buy the authors that were from that country or about the country. I just didn't see anything that caught my eye, unfortunately. But
I was lucky enough to be with Carlos and Yolanda, who had every recommendation. Right. So like I had so many books, dude, in my check bag that I was not sure if I was gonna make the weight limit on the way home. So I'm like, yeah, what clothes can I leave here? Like that's kind of where I was at. I was like, pants gone, shoes gone.
Right.
I got to bring back all this stuff. I'm actually reading a book right now called The Searcher by Tana French, I believe her name is. She's Irish, and it's kind of a crime procedural, but it's about a Chicago PD officer who ends up going to Ireland to retire into the West Side, like out in the country, and then of course ends up getting involved in some sort of like mystery, right? But my God, it's so Irish. And after I've been there and talked with the people who are wonderful, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah.
So there's way more Irish authors that I knew of that I didn't know they were Irish than I thought, which was kind of surprising.
Well, one of the fun facts I learned is like the first Olympic medal that Ireland won was like in poetry. So it was like back in the day that was an Olympic sport, I guess, and they like won. I might have just made that up. I don't know. I could have sworn that's what they told me. At least that's what I dreamt that they told me. But definitely a bunch of poets and smart people in literature over there for sure.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a huge culture still around literature and just the arts in general, really. Which is pretty great. I was just impressed by how many independent bookstores there were. You know, there's not nearly as many bookstores as pubs, to be fair, but maybe a close second would be bookstores to pubs, which is very different than in America, at least where I'm at. I know every single store is Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. That's really it. Like there's not a lot else. And they all kind of feel the same. Like I was explaining this to my wife, Kelsey. I was like, do you remember, and you'll remember this. Do you remember whenever you walked into a bookstore, not for the first time, but maybe like going in to find a new read and you look at all the books around, you're like, how can I find a book to read in here? Like there's so many books to read. I'll never have enough time. Well, lately, when I go into like Barnes and Noble and stuff, so I read predominantly fantasy and sci-fi. I read a little bit of everything though. That's actually one way me and you are very similar is that we have kind of wide variety of taste. But I've been walking into like Barnes and Noble and stuff, dude, and I'm just like, I don't have that same sense of wonder because I'm like, oh, Reddit, all these things, you know, and I'm like, man, maybe there isn't that much left. But then I walk into this bookstore with 60,000 unique books, and I'm like, there is so much I've not heard of. You know, it actually kind of reignited that wonder of like trying new things, picking up different authors I hadn't heard of, and you know, just buying stuff off the synopsis and not looking on Goodreads. Like for instance, The Searcher has like a 3.5 on Goodreads. Like people don't love it, but I'm glad I've read it. I'm almost done with it. I really like it. So
doesn't everything have a 3.5 on Goodreads though?
Everything that I like is a 3.5 on Goodreads. I mean, there is the exceptions. Like we both like Stormlight. Those books are extremely highly rated. Right, you know? A lot of the big hitters that have like fandoms around them, I think those do well. But man, if you go off the beaten path, there's a good chance you're going to end up in that 3 range. Some of my favorite books are right around there.
I kind of have a similar thought about like what you're saying about bookstores, though. I feel like Barnes and Noble nowadays, like I love a good Barnes and Noble, but like I'm going there because I know what book I'm looking for and I'm beelining it to the section. Like I know what's there, but like how I approach independent bookstores is like, these guys don't even sort it in alphabetical order. So like, how am I supposed to find something if I wanted it? And like, even if it did, like there's some independent bookstores where it's just like, it looks like a tornado ran through there. And that's like my favorite ones. Cause then it's literally just, oh, the employee put a little handwritten note on it and said, I like this one. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take your word for it. And then we're going to walk away with a random book. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You've also get some stinkers that way because it's just real off the wall stuff. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best functions of Booktube, at least it used to be, I think it still is in a lot of ways, is like curating things to bubble up to the top to try to recommend to people. And I think that's why people really like lists, because they're going to get 10, 20 books thrown at them. Maybe they heard of all of them besides one, but that's a new book that we can go Google and find and then buy and then experience.
No, that's true.
I think that's like one of the best functions of kind of what, I guess, what we do, but also makes a lot of sense of why Book Talk is so popular as well. I mean, it has way more people on the platform. And it does help. It does help to kind of have someone else kind of sift through it, because it's such a huge investment to sit down with the book, even if it's only 300 pages. You know, for most people, that might be the only book they read all year.
Right.
So if it sucks, that could literally kill reading in the water. You know, done. Which always gives me a bit of anxiety when I recommend a book and someone's like, oh, I haven't read in forever, but this sounded great. And I'm like, oh God, no.
Yeah. When I'm recommending a book to someone who I know is not like a real reader, I will only give them like tried and true classics. Like I'm saying like To Kill a Mockingbird, because if you don't like it, like I can just say like, you're just an imbecile, but like, I'm not going to give you like one of my personal favorites, because then like, you're not going to like it. You're never going to read again. You're like, I don't want this off the wall fantasy book. I just wanted like a simple story. But like, you give them something like everybody likes, and that is like critics agree it's a great book, then my hands are clean, right? That's
so
my
you say it's you, not the book at that point, right?
Yes, I'm not taking any blame for non-readers, at least. For if you're a reader, I could kind of like I could lead you in, right? But for a non-reader, like you said, the pressure's too high. I'm not going to take any blame for that.
Oh, it's the worst too, because I mean, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, everybody that doesn't read will hear you read and go, oh, that's great. I wish I had time to read. I just can't seem to find the time. And then they're like, well, if I were to get into reading, what would you suggest? And I'm like, I'm literally working with a blank slate, zero idea of which, you know, it's the most terrible thing ever.
It's the worst when you're reading like you're reading Malazan and then they go, oh, what's that book about? I'm like, you don't want to know. And then they push you on it. I'm like, you just read the back and you just say you're confused rather than me saying it like out loud. It's a rough world out there. That's why I never super intense fantasy books. I never read in public unless it's on my Kindle. And maybe that's like, I care too much about what people think, but like, I just don't want to have the conversation. Not that I'm ashamed. I just don't want to have the conversation. And non-readers love to ask you what you're reading.
It's so true. It's so true. And then they will relate it to whatever thing is closest. So like, oh yeah, I'm reading Midnight Tides. Like, oh, I read Prisoner of Azkaban once. It was really good.
Like, yep, exactly the same, actually. Glad we can connect on that point. Have a great rest of your day.
If it's Malazan, you just say, have you seen Band of Brothers? And be like, yeah, be like, now imagine magic with that. And then there you go. I mean, that's a great explanation though. Oh, I mean, there's a reason why this is the #1 live booktube show in the world. I mean,
You're a professional.
Oh, and when these lights hit me, nobody's better. There's just no. Right. And honestly, I brought you on because I knew you would not be afraid of the big stage, the big lights, because you have like a million things going on in your town tonight. There's a Nicki Minaj concert. You got baseball games going on. But Owen was like, I want the true main event. I want chatting with nuts. And then here we are. You know, you've made it.
So, and no one can see my knees quivering beneath me either.
You know, I thought I saw a little bit of a shake, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to pin out. I didn't want to embarrass you. So what did you think when I reached out to you to come on the show? Because I'm sure I'm almost positive you probably had never even heard of me, right? Whenever I messaged you, because I think I hit you up on Instagram like a couple months back, and I was like, dude, you're awesome. Can I talk to you?
You know, I don't know what came first. And sorry, there's honking going on, but I don't know what came first. But yeah, you reached out, like, I think it was like around like, it was a few months ago. It was like January maybe, or February. Mm-hmm. It was like early on in the year. And like, I don't think I knew who you were really, but all I knew was like, you have a big number next to your name. And my number at the time was like 600. I'm like, this was clearly a butt DM, and you have hit the wrong person. And you're like, love to come on the show. So like, I binged watched like 14 of the episodes. I'm like, what is this? Should I be saying yes? And then I'm like, sounds good. Love to do it. Radio silence for 7 months. I'm like, okay, clearly botched that social interaction. And then you came out of the woodwork, and then here we are today, nary 5 days later.
Yeah, man. I kind of sprung it on you. I'm like, hey, you want to come on? It was like Sunday. I'm like, you want to come on this Friday? I expect you to be like, bro, no, it's Friday night, like in the beautiful weather. Absolutely not. But thankfully, you said yes. So I am very, very thankful that you did. But yeah, dude, I found your channel and there's just something about your energy. It's slightly chaotic, but also so genuine. My favorite thing about your channel was actually a comment I read on one of your videos, and it said that, let me see if I can find the quote. Yeah, I saw a comment that said that you give a serial killer vibe.
Oh, I did read that one, in fact.
So how's that going for you? Is that working?
Well, you know, it's not the vibe I was setting out for. Unfortunately for me, it's just what comes out naturally. I don't really know. Like, I always start off the videos, and listen, guys, I'm not bouncing off the walls here all the time. All right, let's not get it twisted. I'm usually setting out to do just a normal review. I'm talking about a book that I read, pretty standard stuff. It just so happens that like when I reach like the 7, because I don't edit my videos, by the way, when I reach like the 7 or 8 minute point of me talking, like my brain just starts like disintegrating. So usually, like if you just want some quick entertainment, watch any of my videos, but specifically the last like 2 minutes. At that point, I've just gone off the rails and I'm just yelling at like an old man yelling at a cloud. It's just, I think that's where I get that from, because I personally feel like I'm very well adjusted.
See, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, so they have the Midwest serial killer. I mean, they're not totally wrong. Actually, it's kind of oddly spot on. And also, I love this. Ronak Attack says Toasty Nuts. I love it.
Toasty Nuts. What a collab.
We are a match made in. So why Toasty, by the way?
It's a long story and it's not that interesting. So the short answer is alliteration, because Towns is my last name. But really the long answer is it's like my family's, like all my immediate family's initials. Like you put all our names together, it forms Toast. So Toasty. It was just one step further. I made the channel name and I'm talking about books. So people were like, what town of toastiness, like, are we talking about here? And I realized that I made like a branding error there, but I feel like now it's too late to walk it back.
Oh man, do I feel that. The Fantasy Network one is a stupid name. It's a pun, and
it's pretty iconic though.
I mean, at this point, yes. But if you don't know, like, first off, it sounds like it would be like a XXX channel, like more RedTube.
It does.
Not so much YouTube. And the pun is you're only capable of understanding the pun if you know my name, which is Jimmy Nuts. So unless if you've invested enough time to watch my video, the name makes absolutely no sense. And I cover so much more than fantasy on the channel now that it's just, I stress over this all the time. I'm like, should I change the name? Should I change? But I have like 200 something videos of me going, welcome back to the Fantasy Network, everyone. My name's, of course, Jimmy. So I can't. I literally I can't. I'm stuck in a lifetime contract unless if I delete all my videos. And I can't do that.
If you were going to change, what would the rebrand be?
I thought about King Cobra. I thought that was cool because like snakes are, they're intimidating, and I think I am intimidating. So I thought about King Cobra. I also considered just James Reads, because that would be interesting. And then the other one I thought about Fiction Network, but that doesn't get rid of the pun. And then I also just thought about just calling it my name, just Jimmy Nuts, because I don't think anyone's here for my book takes exactly anymore. I think it's more about me and trying to understand like this midlife crisis I'm going through and being past my prime and on the way out and, possibly suicide. No, I think people are more invested in the downfall than they are in the book choices. Because let's be honest, I read a lot of boring books, which you do too, by the way, which I love. So I don't know. As you can tell, I run in circles. It's like a hamster in a treadmill, kind of thing. So I don't know. Have you ever really thought about changing your name, or you're full self?
No, I don't. I mean, it's like something's like, well, if I really wanted to like, because great brands, it's like you look at them, you know exactly what they do. It's not that deep, and I think you're fine. I mean, people that know and love you, like, they would never let you live it down if you changed your name. And the new viewers would be even more confused because they'd be like, what is this Fantasy Network that everyone's talking about? I think you're just better off letting it ride. You know what? We made our bed. We got to lay in it, right?
Yeah, and I do go for the confusion angle quite a bit, as everyone saw at the
Mm,
beginning of this episode, where I did a horrendous bit that bombed. So I think it's kind of on brand with just being nonsense. I think that actually helps out quite a bit. But
mhm.
the grandma network is actually not the worst idea, because I do love grandma books. That's like a thing with me. I also like
What's a good grandma book?
anything by Barbara Kingsolver, like
Okay.
Demon Copperhead, grandma book,
Hmm.
100%. Have you
Hmm.
read it?
I have not. I've heard great things.
You should read it, especially
Mhm.
since you grew up in an area that would probably ring true with you. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think I'm just going to leave the branding as is. I have been thinking about maybe switching things up. Do you ever get the feeling that you want to change up the way you do things, or are you just very happy with what you got going on?
Well, that's the thing. It's like not to say that I always do things the exact same way because I've certainly tried different things, but I try, and that's part of the reason why my content is such low quality is because I just like, all right. I'm not trying to be self-deprecating here. Low production quality, perhaps we can agree on that. But I just think like I want to talk about a book. I talk about the book. I want to do a monthly recap. I'll do the monthly recap. I've kept it very bare bones for the last few months. So like I'm not really experimenting too much. So I don't really feel the need for a rebrand, but maybe that's something in the cards. Sometimes I get like super ambitious. I'm like, what if I did like this specific project? And then I realize that like that would take a lot of work.
Is free time something that you have, or are you pretty busy?
Well, it's like I think I keep myself fairly busy. I got a lot of like strange, like ancillary hobbies that I like to. I'm a very much like when I'm focused on one thing, it is my entire life for that 3 month period. And sometimes that's YouTube, sometimes it's something else. But
Hmm.
recently, it hasn't been like full steam ahead YouTube. Like maybe like last fall, I would say I was more focused on it. But I mean, I still like to do it. I still like to post consistently. I still like interacting with everybody. It's been great, obviously, but I don't know. It's also, but I like look at my screen time. It's like a dozen hours. Like I have plenty of free time. Like I don't know what I'm talking about. But
I mean, I think we're all kind of
no,
guilty of
we're all
that.
cooked. It's just it's a
Yeah, it's a lost
national.
cause.
Yeah, for sure.
In Ireland, they don't have this problem. Just saying. Like when I went to,
It's true.
just ever since
There's
I've came,
there's no Instagram on sheep out there.
there are a lot of sheep though. My God, that was the first thing I saw from the plane. Like, come down through these clouds, you're like, what an amazing place, and there's just sheep
Yeah.
everywhere. Holy cow. Man, ever since I've come back, I've just been unbearable to everyone I know. I love it. Oh
Yeah.
God. If
Great.
you have not traveled to Europe, folks, I recommend it. You can just be a nuisance to everyone who hasn't been, and you can just, just be a real ass. And
I gotta ask, do you have like travel anxiety though? Like that they're gonna like discover you're an American and like
so I got called a thick-headed Yankee by a lot of people, and
okay, yeah.
I
So
got
clearly
the
you weren't
vibe.
hiding it very well.
Yeah, I got the vibe after about the fourth time that maybe I'm standing out. And I don't know if it was the bald eagle sweatshirt that I had on with the American flag golf hat, but
Right.
it could have been. It might have been my accent, maybe. I'm not really that sure. But yeah, a lot of thick-headed Yankee. I got that quite a bit. Then I told
Mhm.
someone that I said, I keep getting called a tick-headed Yankee by people. And he said, well, I don't know if you're thick. And I was like, thanks, man. I think. Because thick in America that's a different thing, right? Like there's
It
three
is.
C's. It's it's a
Right.
compliment for a lot of people, if you're thick. But think I don't think it meant the same thing over there, which is unfortunate. So
I think your intuition is probably correct,
you think
unfortunately.
so?
Yeah.
Did anyone insult you while you were there?
Well, no, because I have extreme like hyper awareness, right? And like I went with my parents, and like my mom had never been to Europe before, so she was just like enjoying it, like fully embracing the tourist life. My parents were just like, asking questions. I'm like, I don't want them to know that I don't know where I'm at, because then they'll like somehow think less of me. So I like keep words to a minimum. Like I'm ordering a drink, I mumble it. That's why, like, do I have an accent? Like, am I local? Like, and I'm just like ordered the most horrendous like plate of food I've ever seen in my life because I didn't know what it was and didn't want to like ask for like a hamburger or something.
Just bangers and mash the whole trip.
Yeah, and I will say though, we stopped in London too, and English food gets a lot of hate. And I will say those mushy peas were disgusting. I will agree with that.
Wow. This is a big development now. This is the #1 show in Europe. So I do apologize to everyone from Europe that's listening that could affect.
I stand by what I said.
Wow. Strong words from a strong man. Dude, I actually really liked Irish food. I had bangers and mash. Like I thought it was great. And then actually Carlos, the gentleman that he is, he brought me into his home and he made me beef Wellington. Beef Wellington's not exactly easy to make. And he knocked it out of the park. I was so impressed. I had an absolute banger of a time. Benjamin says the Irish curry slaps. What is Irish curry?
That is a great point. I did have some Irish curry and it was very good. The food for the most part is very, very good. The only thing you're going to get wrong in Ireland is trying to order American food, because they do like overcook their meat to the extreme. So my advice is just don't try to get anything that you're like used to getting in the States. Just eat what they're eating and it's delicious.
Yes. And actually I'm not like the biggest like processed meat sausage person in the world, but Irish sausage, totally different, actually. Tasted much better, to be honest. But you know, it's funny. I do know the feeling of like not really wanting to be loud and talk. So I went on a Game of Thrones tour. I was over there. I actually went and saw a bunch of threats, from season 1 and 2, and I'm a huge fan of the show. So it was just the best thing ever. However, there were a couple of other Americans on this tour, and Owen, let me tell you what. I was like, I get it. I get why everyone hates me now. Because of there were 3 people. They were from the Bronx, and they were just so loud, so very loud and so rude. They kept interrupting the tour guide, who was an extra in season 6, 7, and 8, and also an extra on Highlander. Pretty cool.
Okay.
Also, Brent said the best thing about the American Revolution accomplished is making so I don't have to eat beans on toast. God bless you, brother. I agree. Beans on toast, I'm out on. But they were like interrupting the guy and trying to like do the tour. It was insane. Like, and I was just like, oh, this is the cliche type of experience. But man, that tour was something else. Like, it was absolutely incredible. I could not believe how surreal it was to stand in some of those locations, to know all the work that went into those, and really, really cool. I don't know about you, but did you feel a sense of like, I don't know, like artistic inspiration whenever you were in Ireland? Because the mood there is just totally on point.
Oh yeah. It's just like, and that's the thing with, I feel like all of Europe's like that. Like Ireland's like that. The UK's like that, where it's just, you can just feel the history of it. And I love a good like history. So I read a lot of like Middle Ages, like historical nonfiction type stuff. So just be in that area where like every building you see at is like 600 years older than the oldest building in America. Yes. In Ireland, a little less so, because a lot of their development is newer, but like London, like a lot of those buildings are just ancient. But then like the castles in Ireland too, like some of those are just hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's just, you're sitting in there and you could like feel the weight of like centuries. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of putting it. And you kind of just realize like how young like America is on the global scale comparatively. And I went to a Viking pub that was, I think, 1,000 years old, and it was tremendous. They had like Irish music playing the whole time, 2 dudes sitting in a corner getting paid in Guinness and just rocking out. Like, it's just like, man, this is just a totally different area, you know. Like, I just had never really experienced anything quite like it. So but man, I was in the Valley of Lakes, Glendalough, and I was just like, man, if I had a notepad, I could just sit down here for like 8 hours and attempt to write something legible, you know, in some sort of story. I can see why a lot of the fantasy shows that we watch, or even like Vikings, was set there. And it's a great set piece for it, for sure. I feel like we should also probably just mention like what you're into. I kind of skipped that part.
Sure.
So why don't you tell people, you know, the things that you're talking about on your channel, the books that you like. I would love to hear what your #1 recommendation for people is, because you said you go to classics. You mentioned To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's like my go-to for like non-readers though. Like everyone knows to read that book. But this is like a group of like very sophisticated people. So I really got to think about this one. So I'm just going to talk about what I like first, and maybe my recommendation would just be my favorite book. Does that sound reasonable?
I think that's a beautiful way of doing it.
Okay. So I would say I definitely read the majority fantasy. So we do have a lot of crossover, and in that respect, I don't always want it to be. It's always my most read because I just love it. I just get sucked into that kind of stuff. Like I mentioned, I like to sprinkle in some nonfiction, historical nonfiction. But then also something I feel like that's also not super common, I guess, in our niche of booktube is I like to read like the really, really popular, sometimes lower quality stuff that's like super mainstream right now too. Because a lot of people that I'm friends with in real life tend to read those like really, you walk into a bookstore, it's the front, like they paid for the advertising space, like those kind of books. So that leads to a lot of romance. So kind of delved off into that genre a little bit. But really it's just anything and everything. If I get a good recommendation, like I'm the type of guy that's like, I'll read anything once. And I'm not snooty about genres. I'm not snooty about authors. So I just try to keep it real, you know what I mean? But in terms of recommendations, like my favorite book of all time is The Stand by Stephen King. Maybe a controversial opinion. I know people got their feelings about King in that book specifically. Love that book. It's like the book, I was already a reader for many, many, many years when I first read it. I think I read it for the first time, like maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. It's like I revisit it all the time. I think it's perfect. No complaints. I don't feel that way about Stephen King in general, though, so maybe that's a discussion we can have. But that's my favorite book of all time. Malazan's my favorite fantasy series. I make videos about that, talking about that stuff. Love that series. But really, I just love, and this is going to sound pretentious. I'm not pretentious, Jimmy.
You're not pretentious at all. Don't worry.
Not at all.
No.
But I really love a good theme. And that's like if I had to pick a preference, I'm like a book with a good theme. There's nothing that enrages me more than seeing a piece of art that like has no like, what was this for? Because I hate wasting my own time. And okay, side tangent. I like theater a lot too. That's probably like my second primary hobby. I watch a lot of theater. It's like involved in like my careers and not in the fun side of theater, but it's involved in theater where I get to see a lot of it, which is I'm very grateful for. And that's my biggest thing too, is like a show has a theme, a story has a theme. It captures my interest and I love it so much, but it's something without it, it's frustrating to me. And I don't know if that made any sense, but it's been said.
I think it makes sense. The funny thing about you is like one of the things I was going to give you a compliment on is that there's no air of pretension around you at all, which is rare for a theater kid. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a little rare. I'm
not just any theater. I'm actually a director as well. So that's what I did. I don't act, but I'm all about like actors, if that makes sense. So that's like one of like when I talk about like I hyper focus on things, like I was directing a show back in April and just like like delving deep into that, like I don't know, man, it just gets me excited. I don't know, I just like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fine. Ryan has a question. He says, "What about something to turn it all off? You can't enjoy good Kong versus Zilla?"
Listen, again, it's like it's not like a binary though. Like, it's not like I hate everything without it, because I absolutely love like absolute garbage tier entertainment. And I feel like that's another thing that like, I feel like people struggle with too, is like, you can't, like, you have to know going in, like, this is not for that kind of enjoyment, if that makes sense. And the books that like I read, but I don't talk about on my channel are the ones like, I just don't have anything interesting to say about this. Mostly because if it's a book that it's not trying to do anything. It's just trying to give you some action, trying to give you some fun. I like reading those books. They're a good breath of fresh air. They're good things to shake it up, but it's like, it doesn't move me. You know what I mean? So the books that I love, the books that I really like change like your brain chemistry, are the ones that do that. So no, I like watching crappy movies. I like reading a nice fluff book. I do that all the time. There's plenty of them out there. It's hard to miss them. But no, I'm not like elitist like that. It's just, I don't know.
You would like to take something away from your experience, whether that's entertainment or anything. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. And I also don't think that you mean like walk away like, what was this about, or what did I get out of this? Not so much. You're not worried about confusion or like dense things, because I know that you've tried Book of the New Sun.
Yeah, and that's a great kind of like bouncing off like what I'm trying to say here too. It's like, just because I'm looking for themes, like, doesn't mean I'm smart enough to like understand them. And that's a perfect example. So like I was recommended Book of the New Sun, And I'm like, they're like, oh, like you like Malazan, you're gonna love this. I'm like, sure. Literally went in completely blind. Quite frankly, never heard of it. I mean, they locked me up, right? But I went to the library. I read the first one. I'm like, this makes no sense, but you could just tell when you're reading a book, like if the author is of high quality or not, because like, or I can tell at least, because it's like, I don't understand it. And I know it's because I'm dumb. I know it is. Like, I know this author is saying something very, very important, but I don't get it. But I know it's there. And I read that entire 4 books, the main 4 books there, and I loved it. But I need to read it again because I don't fully understand it, to be honest with you. And I know there's people, and I love a good book where people just write like essays about these kind of things. And that's a series where it's definitely like that. But it was a crazy ride.
It was
that, right?
Yeah, it's quite the experience. And I got to give a shout out to Moyd over at Media Death Cult. He just released the ultimate guide to Book of the New Sun. It's a 2-hour video, and it is supposed to be the most comprehensible Book of the New Sun video that you can find. And Moyd has been putting in so much work to make his stuff, elevated. Wow. Like opposite of you and I, very, very high production quality, will be relevant for 40 years probably on the platform as long as YouTube's still around. And it's one of the ones that I want to watch. I would love to sit down and watch it. The only worry is that I think the 5th book has a section in the video, and I haven't read that. Are you going to read the sequels?
Wait, so the 5th book is
Earth of the New Sun, right?
I haven't read that one either. So
Earth of the New Sun. I've been supposed to read this book. Yeah, Earth of the New Sun. So I was supposed to read this like 5 times already with my boy Belltube, and I keep forgetting to read it. But I honestly, I kind of feel like you. Like I almost want to reread.
Rewatch the words as you're reading them. Yeah,
yes, and just watch my mind blank. But I almost want to reread the main 4 before I continue on. So
it's interesting though, because like I had the fifth book in hand, and like I was asking, like as I was doing the research, I'm like, guys, like should I be reading this 5th one? Like I know some people are like, don't read it. And this isn't really a spoiler, but like the book itself is structured like that you should reread it. So I'm almost like, well, maybe I should understand it before I continue on. People say you can do either way, so maybe it doesn't matter. But it's an interesting book that way, where it's like the author is aware that you're not going to get it, which I think is a very interesting way to approach writing a series as well. Very ambitious.
I don't know how true this is, but I was always told that the publisher like recommended he publish that book, and it wasn't something that he necessarily wanted to do. And I think that's where the contention comes in. But Jared is saying, and Jared's way smarter than me, he said, Moyd mentions this, it is a non-negotiable part of the series. And then Key actually follows it up and says, Book of the New Sun is a 5-book quartet that's actually one story.
Right. Because it is a continuation. But my question is like, and guys, let me know, in the 4th book, he says to reread the books. So like, do I listen to that, or do I just read the 5th book?
Well, Jake says I read Earth without rereading, thought it was pretty damn good. I mean, the one nice thing about Book of the New Sun is that it is such a captivating series, and some people are so interested in it that like the recaps are out there. There's reviews that you can watch and probably catch back up on. Jared is screaming at his monitor right now. I don't know what that's all about. A big shout out to iSamwise, by the way. 10 spots. Super, super gracious of you. Says, so glad Owen's here. Also glad he lets us stake his reputation with our book recommendations. Glad for the new Andrew Clavin thriller and Gene Wolfe love. Thanks for doing the Lord's work here, Jimmy. Well, Samwise, thank you for being so generous, and thanks for being here on a Friday night. Owen,
Sam's making great Book of the New Sun videos as well. He's doing like the themes of that and Christianity. It's good stuff that he's doing as well. So shout out to him.
Beautiful. And we know you like themes, and Joanna wanted to know, what are your favorite themes in books?
Well, that's a good question. So like an example, at least where like I feel like I at least have a good understanding of at least semi what I'm talking about, and keeping like, I'm going to go back to Malazan here. And I know there's dozens and dozens of channels of people that are like, they know Malazan. I wouldn't consider myself someone that like fully grasps everything, all the lore and stuff like that. But one thing I found in my reread of that series is like Steven Erikson like has a very clear theme for each book, right? And like the overall theme of the series, you could say, is like compassion, but like moving on to each specific book, he kind of has like building themes on that, like about like unchaining yourself from the past, repeating the past, the dangers of indifference and stuff like that. And if you're reading a book like that, like looking for what the author is trying to tell you with every single scene and every single subplot. That's a great example of a series where like, if you're looking for it, you can be rewarded in that way. In terms of themes that like I gravitate towards, I'm a sucker for like the purposeless main character who's just like, what do I mean? Like, what's my purpose in life? Like that kind of like discovering yourself, discovering your self-worth kind of things. Like, I think, I haven't finished Realm of the Elderlings, but reading the Farseer trilogy, I really, really gravitated to Fitz's character. I think his journey in that first trilogy was like super, super moving to me. It's just like someone who like really like an unmolded ball of like, what is this kid, like this little kid, and watching him like grow into a fully fledged character. And maybe that's just more character related than themes, but just kind of like exploring that kind of transformation of characters and like finding this purpose. It's just, I just eat that stuff up all day.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, because that's something that I've always been gravitated to. I love Fitz as well, and I love everything that you said about Malazan as well. But for me, one of the themes that I've been looking for in books, and I'm sure people can recommend some. I can think of one example off the top of my head, but more themes about people that are a little bit later in life, that maybe the best of their days is behind me. I'm talking about me. I need more me in books. But you discover, for instance, you're talking about discovering your purpose or whatever, but like what happens if that purpose has an expiration date and then you have to move on after that? Glotka from First Law is a perfect example. This is a guy who's famous warrior or soldier, whatever, and then gets captured, and then his life completely changes. But I would almost like something that's a little less on the nose than that, like someone that is like transitioning out. This is actually one of the things that Legends and Lattes I kind of liked about that book, is it was someone that was kind of leaving one walk of life to go to another that they really weren't all that talented at, and had to work really, really hard to do, or really, really hard to accomplish things, right? Like running a business in that example. So I would love to see that theme of like post-purpose, actually. I think that would be interesting. And if anyone has any recommendations, please put them. You're better off putting them in the comments rather than the chat, because I can see the comments more solidified underneath the video. Can you think of any characters or themes like that in a book? I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
No, yeah. So you're saying like characters that like maybe achieve their purpose and like moving on from that, or like they're like just older characters like trying to.
Well, I just want older characters in general, especially in fantasy. I feel like where there's a little bit, there's always a tendency of glorifying and kind of like putting the young life on a pedestal, when in reality,
right? Yeah,
we're kind of dumb into like 25, 30.
What was that? It's not coming to me right now. It's the book about the mercenaries who like come back to like one, like a lot of like music themes and like
Kings of the Wild by Nicholas.
Kings of the Wild. Well, that's a good. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read that, so I don't really know how well it delves into that. Like, but I know it was like
it's
getting back together. Like maybe too old for this, but I really like that book. I remember liking that book a lot. That's like
that's one of those books that I think people really liked, and then people were like, "There's not a lot here." Like, maybe the themes aren't it. It's very entertaining. It's kind of.
It was a little, it's a little like.
But I loved it.
I know what you mean.
I loved it for that. It was very readable. I thought Nicholas Ames did a pretty good job. I also love in that book, and also this is something I love in books, is like coming back to friendships and they've changed. It by Stephen King has this, where there's a section of childhood and then a section of adulthood, and like how did we change? What things stayed the same? And those ties are never, they're never permanent. And I think that that's also kind of an interesting thing, like two characters on a different journey coming back together and realizing how much they've changed is a really cool thing. Kind of gives me hope that people can change, because sometimes I struggle with that idea. One of the series that I was definitely thinking of, Brent says this year, need to get dude on Second Apocalypse. R. Scott Baker stuff is very grim, but he also centers a lot of his stories around, or his story, at least in the first trilogy, around more adult characters. There's a middle-aged sorcerer who hates his job and thinks that his superiors are idiots. And it's like, man, I love that. I love that for a comic. So I do think there's a little bit of that in Second Apocalypse, but it's not even just older characters. It's more like, I've done the thing that I set out to do, and now what? Because that's something in my life I'm certainly still looking for the answer of. And I'll never find it probably, and I'll probably die unhappy, but that's fine. I would just like to see a book that maybe tackles that at some point. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Wax and Wane is not what I need, Andre. Wax and Wane suck. Have you read Mistborn Era 2?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty. I don't know. I'm in and out on Sanderson. I've read the majority of the Cosmere stuff, though. I've read all of Stormlight. I'm rereading Stormlight now, actually.
I gotta talk to you about that because.
Okay.
I'll put a pin in it. We'll come back to it.
Okay, we'll put a pin in it. I've read Mistborn, Era 1 and Era 2. Then I did Warbreaker, Elantris, and that's all of them, right? Is there more?
There's plenty.
Yeah, well, I haven't read any of the novellas. I haven't read the secret projects that were in the Cosmere. I burned the secret projects. I didn't like the first two, so I haven't even touched the rest of them. But yeah, all like the main pillar ones I've read. So yeah, not a fan of Wax and Wane, eh?
Not. Hey, Brent sums it up. Did you know Wayne wears hats? No. I didn't much care for it. There was things about it. Like one of the things that I kind of realized reading Era 2 is how much I actually appreciated the world building and magic system from Era 1. Like when I was reading it, it was kind of like, oh, it's a gimmick, it's whatever. But like returning to Era 2, 3 years probably after I read Era 1, I was like, man, that was pretty well constructed, like overall. And so I was happy about that. But yeah, Wax and Wane just did not do very much for me. I felt like the books were very quick, which is great, and they're entertaining, but overall I didn't get much from them. I'm also with you. I didn't really care much for the Secret Project. I'm up and down as well. I love Stormlight. I think it's great. Rhythm of War. You were higher in Rhythm of War than I was for the most part, but I'm still very excited for book 5. And the thing that makes you certifiably insane is the fact that you were trying to reread all 4 Stormlight books before the next one comes out, which is like 3 months, 2.5 months.
And one thing you guys should know about me is like I do not read comparatively. I do not read that much, guys. Like I read like 3 books on a good month, and like we're talking like 1,000 pages, like 1,200 pages. So like I'm trying to fit in 1,000-page books on top of the books that I was going to read anyway. I might have bit off more than I can chew, but rereads go a little bit faster. I'm excited for the book, so maybe like I can push through it. But yeah,
dude, I was watching your video, and you're like, I'm gonna read this, and I'm like, bro, with how? Like, how?
But it's also like it's funny because like I've never done anything like that before. So like, why I suddenly have this burst of energy to think that I can do that? The ego is running high this fall. Let's just say that.
Listen, I think that it's good to have goals and ambitions.
It is good to have goals. Yeah.
It's good to have goals. I wish you the best in that goal, because that is, I mean, is there any concern that you'll burn yourself out? Because so basically what I did, I read all the Stormlight into Rhythm of War, and admittedly I was burnt out by the time I read Rhythm of War, which really, I think, kind of hurt that experience. So is there any concern for that with you, or no?
I think it'll be different because it's a reread. I already know. Okay. It's still fairly fresh in my head. I mean, a lot of like the smaller subplots, it's new to me again, I guess. Broad stroke stuff, fairly fresh still. So it's been going smooth. I'm about like 450 pages in already, and I said I was going to start this like last Saturday. So I feel like I'm making decent pace. We'll see what happens though, because I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if this was your opinion, but I think that the books get harder to speed through as they get further in. I think Rhythm of War, it doesn't flow as nicely as the other ones, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I kind of felt at some points that I was kind of just getting almost like a checklist of things, like, okay, now this is this and this. And also, I mean, this is one of the impressive things about Stormlight, because now I'm reading the book 5 preview chapters right now. And it's kind of insane like how deep the rabbit hole goes and all of the mysteries inside of the world building in Stormlight. Because like he flips it on its head like 3 times, and then there's just another layer every time. There's like another layer of new things happening, and it's so massive. It's almost overwhelming, to be honest with you. Like there were times in book 4 where I was like, do I understand this series? Like, do I understand what's happening right now? That
actually makes me a little nervous, to be honest with you. Because like I feel like where I fall off of Sanderson's train a little bit is like I think I'm softer on Era 2 than you are. I thought they were fun. I liked how he adapted the magic system so they can combine mix and match powers. I thought that was pretty clever and fun to read. I thought the stories, like, they're a little bit more procedural, but They flowed well enough. However, that last book, I know a lot of people didn't like it at all. I thought it was fine. However, like where he starts getting the like the cinematic universe, like this character from this character, where it starts getting in your face is where it really starts to lose me. It gives me that like MCU, like modern era stage. I don't know if you're a big watcher of the
I'm
MCU.
not a huge Marvel fan, but I know of it.
But where it gets like, before it's like, oh, like Hulk maybe exists in this universe. So it's like every character is here, but like none of them really matter unless like I say that they matter right now. That's what it's kind of starting to feel like. And then like, I like that they were all connected. I like the little Easter eggs he was putting in like Stormlight of like, maybe this character is this character from this book. When they actually start interacting with each other though, that's where it kind of starts to lose me a little bit. And book 4 of Era 2 just told me it's like more of this to come. I'm like, this was my least favorite part actually. So like the fact like, and I know Stormlight has a lot of mysteries to this world, but like if we're doing that stuff and we're going to try to pile in like incursions from Mistworld land and like, I don't know, everyone's jumping out of the holes saying, I have this magic power. I think it'll get a little convoluted, probably too fast. So I'm a little worried about that.
I mean, I think for the people who just like love everything that Sanderson does, or for the most part, like most of it, I think that like you couldn't be eating any better, right? You actually mentioned this in one of your videos too. So Sanderson does a lot, right? He writes a lot, but also even his YouTube channel at times is overwhelming. And you were talking about how like Sanderson used to post like, you know, just weekly updates. He'd be like, oh, sick, I'll check it out. And then it's, you know, now he's releasing something like every other day. And I went on a big rant last episode, I think, of this. And I talked about how I drew the line when he made like why you should read Stormlight Archive or Way of Kings. I was like, that's a Booktuber video. Like, quit taking our content, bro. Like we only have so many ideas. It's not for you to do. But it just seems like he's the kind of a guy that whatever he does it compulsively, and he will just go and go and go. And hey, a lot of people love it.
I mean, hey, he's popular for a reason. You can't say he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. Whether or not it's to my taste or not, it's irrelevant, really.
That's right. Right. And I just judge it on a case-by-case basis. You know, if something sounds good, I will try it. And if I don't love it, then it is what it is.
I will say though, with rereading Stormlight, like I'm remembering like how good it was, because I've been sour on him for a long time. So it's like, well, did I really even like it, or is it just uncultured back then? Like, no, it is good stuff. I'm enjoying it. So
yeah, I reread Way of Kings recently, very slow. I do a reread podcast with my buddy Christian, Lost in Discovery. He's like the Stormlight guy, in my opinion. I think he's like the Alt-Shift X of Stormlight. He's the GOAT. And you know, we reread Way of Kings very slowly, and there were times where I was like, this, like, I don't like this part as much, or maybe the writing or something. But as a whole experience of rereading Way of Kings, I was like, yeah, I still really love this, which was nice because I had read hundreds of fantasy books since the first time I read Way of Kings. And it turns out that I still felt like it held up pretty damn well. So that was cool. I was nervous. I was nervous about going back into it. Jimmy, when are you going to put out a book? I mean, probably never. If I write a book, you guys won't know, because I will put it underneath a pen name, because I would need validation that it's good, and I'm not just being told it sucks or is great because of me. And also, Jarl wanted to know, are you still ready?
No.
Very base. Very base.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, I do love to write. It's like, it's just hard, guys. How do they do it? When I was in college, I had a business degree, but I also was a screenwriting. So I was writing a lot of like movie scripts, TV pilots, that kind of thing. And I really, really liked it. But because I love books so much, I'm like, well, I could just probably like transition to that. And like, I didn't really put like a dedicated effort to it, but you know, I tried it out, and it's just like, it takes so much thought. And there's just times where I'm like, I'd rather be reading than writing. So then I'm like, maybe it's just not for me, because it just takes so much dedication and like trial and error and writing stuff bad first, just so you can get to the good stuff, that like, I just don't have the patience for yet. Never say never, but I just don't have the patience for it yet.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just that I have not had the opportunity to dedicate my entire being to it, which is how I do everything. It's just kind of who I am. And I have way too much respect for the craft to do it as like a side thing. You know, it would need to be the thing. And you hit the nail on the head. a lot of times I start writing, I'm like, man, I'd rather be reading that book that I just picked up. You know, it's so much better than this dog shit that I'm writing down on this page.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm with you as well. If I ever did like I was actually writing a book, like you guys would not know about it until it was like already on the shelves and like a publisher already published it. I'm like, I'm not going to play that game where like I'm writing a book and then you guys are like, well, where is it? I'm like, well, I didn't finish it. Now I'm a loser. Like it would be a secret. So maybe I was lying. I'm not lying though. I promise you. I'm not.
He could be lying though.
I could be.
Could be. And Shelf Unstable, who is Amanda, who's also famous author Anya Dillon, says, so we aren't doing a writing podcast, Jimmy. Maybe one day. But everyone should go check out Severed Echoes, the Veiled Duet Book 1 by Anya Dillon, available on Amazon. You should go check it out. She's terrific. Bep says, if I am uncultured swine, then I simply must be. Let me run around in my pile of new releases in peace while you wait for Game of Thrones to conclude. No one is saying that you're uncultured swine for liking Sanderson. No one's saying that. It's all for fun.
And I think that's a very strange, and to clarify, that's like a very, very common complaint is like, well, you just haven't read real fantasy yet. And that's why you can't enjoy Sanderson. It's just completely different. And if anything, like, I actually have no idea where that attitude normally comes from anyway. Cause like I said, I love Malazan, and like you could say, some circles would say that that's like the pinnacle of like real intelligent fantasy, but like, it's just different. That's all.
Yeah, and the one thing that Sanderson has done is like found his own thing and his own lane, and you know, whether you like it or not, it's kind of irrelevant to the fact that at least he has a thing. The worst offense a book can have for me, especially now, like in fantasy, like I read a lot of stuff that like I'm not sure about. Like I got all the cool stuff out of the way. It's like if I read a book and it just doesn't feel distinct or unique in the crowds of works that I read, it's going to be really hard for me to get pumped up about it in a wrap up to talk about when I read it. You know, well, you'd be like, you know, it was fine. You might be entertained. You might have fun with it or whatever. Now I don't always identify those things correctly. You know, I'm certainly fallible, but one of the number one things I look for is to see people like what their thing is or the voice that they have and how they write. Like for instance, like Joe Abercrombie, I've heard people say that he's a bit one note, and I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if it's all that wrong either. But at least he has his style and things.
He has his own note. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, knowing how hard that is to accomplish as an artist in any sort of format, I just have an immense amount of respect for that, because it takes a willingness to kind of put yourself out there and on display. Like, this is who I am. This is how I do it. And there it is. And that is a very, very tough thing. Like in wrestling, there were so many guys in the independent scene who were just Randy Orton knockoffs or John Cena knockoff. You know, they were good. They were fine. They were a good hand, but to stick out, you know, you kind of have to have something a bit more. And, you know, even for me, you know, I don't know if I always had that when it came to my art and what I did. So Sanderson has that. He has that in spades, in my opinion. And sure, it might not be the most intricate writing of all time or the most, you know, tight, but it's Sanderson. I usually can tell when it's Sanderson writing. So to me, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Derry says, Jimmy has a true love for words and has talked about writing a lot over the years, but it's super hard to love something and not be good at it as you want to be. That is very true, Derry. Very, very true. Especially something I have so much respect for. Like, I don't want to, no one needs another grim, dark fantasy or whatever I would write. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know though. Like, but what if yours, maybe you have that, maybe you have that spark. You just don't know it. You gotta write it first.
Now this is, you know how we said we set lofty goals. I do think I would be able to write something that I could be somewhat proud of and like put out there, but I just know how much work it would be. And I don't know. Also, can we just be honest? Like, every booktuber is writing a book. And I'm fine with that. It makes total sense to me, because like, why wouldn't you? You do the thing that you love. But it does seem like a thing. You know what I mean?
It's a thing. It's certainly a thing. And that's why I'm glad we're in agreement, where it's like, if I did write something, I would want it to be its own thing. Right?
Yes.
Like, it should stand alone. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
I just think that makes the most sense.
Yes, I agree with that. I would want to. It would be a stupid thing to do to not like use the audience that I've curated, but I wouldn't want to. I think I would want it to be completely.
Well, and it's only for the fact that I like, because these people like they care about you, right? So they wouldn't tell you that it was horrible, even if it was.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are some that would, but like no matter what it is, positive or negative, you cannot remove that element of like knowing the person or having a preconceived notion about them or whatever, and then reading it. Now, I do think there are some people who transcend that kind of
sure.
dynamic, and those people are phenomenal writers. You know what I mean? For instance, my boy Alan from the Library of Alexandria, my best friend, is doing an audiobook. He just finished out his first audiobook performance. And whenever he sent me clips of it, at first I'm like, oh, it's Alan. This is sick. But by 5 minutes in, I was actually listening to this. I was, and I didn't think about Alan anymore. And that is the best compliment I could give. And that goes for writing or whatever it might be. I always say this about actors too. There's some actors that are in one thing and you always know them from that thing. And it's really impressive when they switch. I mean, honestly, I would say Bryan Cranston's a great example of this. He's the Malcolm in the Middle dad to me. That was his bread and butter. And then he goes and becomes Walter White. And you're like, whoa. And then he's LBJ. And it's
there's hundreds of good examples of that. Like Daniel Radcliffe's a good example of that. Like he's out there winning Tonys on Broadway. Like he's done it. And then there's like, even like Heath Ledger, like people thought he was a rom-com guy. And then he goes ahead and does the Joker. Like it's just, there's so many great examples of that. And I think too, like circling back to like the booktuber writer thing, it's like, it takes, I'm just personally not built for it. It takes a lot of bravery and like confidence in your, like, I'm going to put this out to my audience. Cause sometimes we're like, oh, what's a built-in X many subscribers equals X many copies. Like not necessarily. Like you're saying, like, I trust my own work enough that like these people will support me, which is great and help me start, but like, I'm going to put my stuff out to the world. And like, this could be something that could turn away like a hardcore fan. And like, I don't want them to think less of me. Like, that's where I would be able to get over it. Right. Like you would tell me I'm good. And then like my insecurity would be like, but you're like, okay, this guy's not really a writer though. Right. So like the people that can do that, if you could finish a book, no matter its quality, it's like, you have my utmost respect. So I'm sure it's got to be one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. Probably pretty nerve wracking. Have you read any Booktubers books?
I don't think so. Not to my knowledge, at least. I mean,
I was hoping there was gonna be some tea. That's unfortunate.
No, I really don't. I don't. I could have accidentally. I mean, hey, Brandon Sanderson's a booktuber now, so yeah, I've read plenty of booktuber books.
Hey, that's actually true, which is super unfortunate. I have an idea for you, and I would love to see you do this. So I want you I'm going to just name maybe 3 books.
Sure.
Okay. And I want you to review them with your facial expressions only.
I'm not very expressive.
Well, we'll find out. Sorry for all those who are audio only listeners, but I'm just going to mention this name, and I just want you to review it with your face.
Okay, hold on.
All right. Center yourself.
Yeah. What if I haven't read the book? What should my face be?
You've definitely read these books.
Okay, you've done your research.
We've already talked about a few of them. But
okay, good.
I just want to see. What we can pull out at you here. Okay, sure. Are you good? You ready? Malazan. Ooh, okay. That's like an 8 out of 10. Okay. East of Eden.
All my facial expressions are exactly the same. Oh yes, quite so.
Under Heaven by Guy Gabriel Kay. I'm pretty sure you read this one. A Happy Place by Emily Henry.
The same reaction for Under Heaven, I feel like.
You're not supposed to talk, Owen.
Just trying to help. Okay, I didn't. Okay, I'll discover a new emotion. Give me one more.
Okay. Pet Sematary. The YouTube thumbnail. Beautiful job, everybody. Give Owen a round of applause. He did not know I was going to do that to him, but that was like my first idea when I was like, oh, I'm going to have Owen on. I was like, I'm going to get him to react with facial expressions, because whether you know it or not, you say you're not expressive. You are one
I
of
was
my
being sarcastic.
okay. You had to have enough self-awareness to know that. I'm glad. You have the best facial expressions. It's something that I also like to do. It's something that was a strength of mine when I performed. So I acknowledged your facial expressions, and I thought that would be a pretty fun bit. That bit was better than the opening bit.
Yeah, we should have just done the whole thing where I don't speak. Everyone would have really liked that.
I think I agree. And Jake actually has the quote here. It says, "You're not supposed to talk, Owen. Jimmy Nuts podcast."
Well, I tell you what, this is what you do. We're changing the show. This is your rebrand you're waiting for. You keep it going. You never have me on again, except I'm on every week in the top right corner. And I just like every time someone says something, I'm just that way like I'm like
Let's
the
go
live
to
fan.
Maybe we can dress you up like a mime. Would you be comfortable with that?
No. I'm not a joke, Jimmy. I'm a serious professional.
You know, I was thinking that actually while as this was going on, I was like, wow, this is kind of next level. Brent says Jimmy purposely creating dead air on his talk show is next level. Thank you. Thank you. I thought it would be anti talk
all the rules. And the fact that before we even started, you're like I got a lot of like people who just listen. So this is like very important. Like we're like talking about like, and then you just go to a whole bit where there's no sound. And so should I talk about what I think about those books? That way the people aren't left out. Like I could have made any.
I think we got the idea. I don't know if you need to. Yes, please do. Out of all those,
which one were you most like? I don't know.
Easily, East of Eden.
East of Eden is so good.
I've had so many people tell me to read. My friend Baron, Your Brain on Books, has been telling me for years. Carlos has recommended. Evie's talked about. I've had so many friends talk about it, but I want it to be you that pushes me over the edge because I got it downstairs. I mean, and I am compulsive when it comes to starting books.
Downstairs, so I got you beat. It's right here.
Well, you're showing me up on my own show.
This isn't even my copy. I bought this for a friend because I love it so much, and I never do that. I'm not generous.
Wow. Alan said he will unrecommend it for you. So give me the why you should read East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
I just think, and it ties into all the things I talked about before. We're not going to go on that rant again about themes, but like, I love making myself feel smart by reading a classic. I think Steinbeck is a fantastic author. And like I love Grapes of Wrath. That's a good one. East of Eden, though, it's just about like, it's good versus evil. It's simple as that. Human nature. And it's a relatively simple story. It's about simple people in America. And I don't know how to pitch you this book other than like, it's just deep, man. But it's well written. It's easy. I shouldn't be pitching this book because it's smarter than me. And you know what? In that way, perhaps all is said has been said.
I would give, if I could facial react to that review or to that pitch. This is what my ready. I think that it's a maybe I
don't know what to tell you. Okay, I'm not trying to sell you the book. Read it if you'd like. If you want to encounter or perhaps combat the evil nature inside yourself, like do you have a propensity to good, propensity to evil? Like you should read this book, right? Because a little bit of everything, yin and yang, right?
Okay.
Nurture versus nature, perhaps.
Oh, okay. That's actually a theme that I really enjoy. Speaking of that, The God Is Not Willing has a lot of that by Stephen Erickson, the sequel to Malazan, and the Witness.
I've not gotten there yet. Pretty good.
I liked it quite a bit. It's like a great Malazan book that's only 400 pages instead of 1,000 pages, which is really nice. But there's a nature versus nurture piece in that book that I found to be pretty striking. Evie has a great pitch. She says East of Eden is Adam and Eve fanfic. I mean, that's a great pitch.
Sure. Yeah. obviously very religious undertones. It's that story. I would say more so Cain and Abel, but I mean,
ooh, Cain and Abel.
There's a little bit of all of it. There's like an Adam character. So it's just that whole Old Testament Genesis.
Does it include the contradictions?
What is that?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Tyler says, this is how you sell a book to Jimmy. East of Eden is the hot girl book of the summer. Bingo. That is exactly. Alan says, nature versus nurture. Would I be less portrayed or more beloved if I too had a gray background for my name? You know, it's a good question, actually. Wait, gray background. I don't understand. What does this mean? Do you know what this means, Owen? Did you do this?
I was hoping that it was an inside joke that you were privy to, because
no, Alan has lost me, actually. I too had a gray background for my name. Is that like the big booktubers like Jared? I think if you have like 100K, I think you get it. Yeah, there it is. Jared's name, his background is gray. And then Jared, you can only see it on YouTube. It's not on StreamYard, unfortunately.
Okay.
Wow, that took me a while to get that joke, which is super duper unfortunate. You have 3 keys to being a better reader. Do you remember what they are?
No.
Beautiful. I know what they are. Find the right book, read differently, and discuss. Do you still think those are the 3 keys of being a better reader?
Whoever said that was a very smart man indeed. I agree with him wholeheartedly.
I think that we should expand upon this. So when you talk about finding the right book, is that kind of like curating, as we talked about before, like Booktube helping out, or is it more of a personal process?
It's little column A, mostly column B, though. I would say like finding the right book, it's like you're allowed to be picky. Sometimes I feel like people feel like you start a book, you got to finish it. That's obviously not the case. But also, like, there's infinite variations of types of books, subgenres, sub-subgenres. Like, to say that there's no book for you is just false, but like you could be patient in finding that, right? So like if you're not vibing with the book, you can really find that out within the first 50 pages, maybe even less so. Like you can't, time is so limited in everything. And reading is just one of your hobbies. Like we can't afford to be wasting time at all. So just find what you like. And then just like, that's just the very, very first step. Don't force yourself to read anything. And that's tough too, because there are some books where it's harder to understand. So you kind of got to push yourself through them. And that's a difficult line to walk. But I think if you're struggling to find something you like, find something you jive with first on a base level.
I like this quite a bit. I also think, you're saying like, there's no time to waste. I think that is like part of the rat race of life, especially in America. And I think that the book for you, whoever you are and whatever book it is the one that makes you forget about that.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like the one that kind of turns that switch off in your brain. Those are the books that I tend to stick with. And there is a pretty fine line. So I'm not a big DNFer, though I am starting to become more of one, because I've kind of come to the conclusion that almost all of my DNFs are not right nows instead. And mood matters, time matters. There's a whole lot of factors that you put into that. And I think books that you DNF, there's the ones that will continue to kind of stay in the back of your mind, itch your brain a little bit. And then you're like, I should get back to that. I should get back to that. Yeah. And then eventually you come back and maybe it's the right time, For instance, I always said if I read Malazan 5 years ago or Robin Hobb 5 years ago, I wouldn't have liked either of them. And now they're two of my very favorites. So timing is really everything.
No, I think that's a fantastic point. I mean, I used to be, and that really rules more so for myself in the past. I know a lot of readers are like that, where like a DNF is like unheard of. Like especially if you're like 300, 400 pages into a long book, it's like somebody mentioned like sunk cost fallacy. That's exactly it. Right. Like you just feel like I wasted so much time on it. I got to finish it at least. That's just not the case. That's something I've gotten better with, is giving up books even 3/4 of the way in. And even to a certain extent, I felt like if I had to read the first of a series, I had to continue it. I don't feel that way anymore. Some people disagree with me on that. Like, oh, I really like this book, I'm not going to continue. That's a new decision I've been making recently.
That's my old channel.
But then also what you said too, for like not right now, that's like a great way to approach, or the way I approach like classics too. Cause I like to read more classics, but you got to be in the right mood for a classic, because they're always denser. They're always like more wordily written, just because it's like a different time period. But Moby Dick was an example where it's like, this is a great book that has like changed people's lives. Like people that I respect are like, this book changed my life. I tried to read it. I'm like, it's not working for me. Yeah. So like I stopped reading it. I'm like, I'm not going to finish Moby Dick, but there will be a time where I will try it. And I don't know when that's going to be. So I think I 100% agree with you there.
I'll tell you what, this is probably not a super popular opinion, but I think that you can get a whole lot out of a book without ever finishing it. I think that there are books that you might just read enough of it and go, okay, that was it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to finish this. But and I think you can still like the book and get something out of it.
Yeah.
There's plenty of examples of this. I'm very big on this with TV shows. Like I will start TV shows and be like, oh, it's a phenomenal show. People are like, yeah, 5 stars. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, did you finish it? I'm like, nope, sure didn't. And it's just so normal in every other, or even like think about CDs, like back whenever, like not just singles, like when albums were like, they were a package thing. Sometimes you only listen to 2 or 3 of the songs, skip the rest, be like, yeah, I like that album. It was good, and kind of move on. Whereas I feel as if the readers, especially fantasy, because of the series thing, there's almost like a built-in shame if you don't finish the book or the series or whatever. Now, there's amount of humility and self-awareness to know that if you didn't finish a book or a series, that maybe you didn't get the whole picture, and maybe you shouldn't shout
comment on
it with objective conviction, right? I think that my lovely producer and wife Kelsey is filling up another Guinness, so everyone give Kelsey a round of applause. Wow, that whistled.
Cheers.
That was cheers. Yes. Do you remember how to pour it? We did the Guinness tour.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's doing a great job. Phenomenal job. Keep going. Don't let it spill. But yeah, so I don't think that you always have to finish a book to get something out of it or even to enjoy it. But in the realm of BookTube, right, of doing this online, it does feel like you kind of have to finish it. I think I would even finish less books, maybe, possibly, if I didn't have a channel. But lately, what I've been doing is I'm reading one book at a time. I was reading multiple books at a time for many, many months, like the last year or two. And I've decided to go down the best I can to one book at a time. And if that book at any point loses me and I'm like, I want to read this next book, I'm just going to put it down and I'll just DNF it and move on. Like I'm trying to get a little bit more hardcore about it because I really do want to, like you said, time's limited. Thank you very much. What a class. She's grand, as the Irish would say. Good crack. But
good crack. That's a great one.
See, I've been there. It was cool. What is
you guys? You got to have been to Ireland. You won't get it.
Yeah, you guys. Honestly, you wouldn't get it. It's fine. Kelsey is reading A Game of Thrones by George Railroad Martin right now to appease me. She's not reading it fast enough though, which is the only problem. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going back to one book at a time, and you gotta captivate me. And yeah, it's a little bit unfair, maybe, possibly, but I finished too many mid books.
I'm not quite at your level, like that level of ruthlessness yet. I'm leaning towards that though. Like there are books where it's like it's slow. I don't know if I want to be finished in that. And I'm like you. I do prefer to be reading one book at a time. Obviously, with my crazy goals, I'm in the middle of 3 books right now, so it's like I'm going against my own word. But I guess just in general, like in my opinion, you just got to be passionate about it, right? Because there's so much other art forms So I'm at the stage where like I feel guilty watching TV because I feel like I would rather be reading. So like if I'm going to give up great TV for a book, like you got to be passionate about it. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, I'm going to hate read something. I don't believe in hate reading things. But like I feel like if you don't love it, if it's not clicking with you, and like love, and not like it's your favorite book ever, but you know what I mean? Right. You're enjoying it. Like you got to be passionate about it. Life's too short to not be passionate about the things that you're doing, just in general. Now, that's deep.
Yeah, but man, I'll tell you what, you should start a philosophy podcast.
Perhaps. I mean, the way I pitched East of Eden as well, it's like, what can I do?
I love it. I absolutely love it, dude. Yeah, and you brought up a good point though. Doesn't have to be your favorite book of all time. Right. No. It doesn't need to be. There are plenty of books that I'm like at a 3-star out of 5 on that I'm still getting something out. And at least whenever I discuss it with people, like I have something to say, or in my mind, especially with the people who comment on the channel regularly, I'm thinking of people, oh, this person might like this book. This person could like this book. And then I try to take that and share it with people, whether or not that they would enjoy it. I think more often than not, though, when I recommend stuff, I actually tell people, hey, you won't like this. Like you should. My boy Theo from Rekindled Reader, by the way, I'm on his channel tomorrow at 11 a.m. for a live stream. And he was mentioning Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, which is now one of my favorite books of all time. And I was like, Theo, do not read this book. Like, you do not need to read this book. I promise you, you're not going to like it.
Right.
which is a bit weird, because if you take a step back from like where we are, the people that you know in real life that read or you have known, a lot of times, even honestly, even places like Reddit, it's like, hey, I want a story about a strong female protagonist, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, I recommend Malazan. Like Malazan's the only recommendation that they get. You know what I mean? It's like everything's Malazan or whatever it might be. Not saying it doesn't have strong female protagonists. I was just coming up with a
No,
random.
yeah. It's not the focus.
Like, I tried to stay away from the unwilling to bend recommendations, blanket recommendation. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Giving recommendations is just hard in general. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I prefer taking them personally. I don't, like I said earlier, I just don't like the pressure.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why I like the top 10 videos that people love so much. I've actually I've done year-end stuff, but I haven't done them because I actually put a lot of pressure on that kind of thing. And I am going to do it, but I don't know if I'll regret it once it's done. What do you make of all of the top 10s on BookTube? How do you feel about it?
I kind of do your approach where it's like at the end of the year, I'll do some rankings, like what are my favorite authors right now? What are my favorite fantasy books right now? Stuff like that. It's all about the framing for me though. Like I try to, and I just feel like maybe this is just the culture I've developed where it's like, I always assume that like, I'm the one on camera, I'm the one yapping, but like, I know the least out of anybody that's going to be watching this video. So it's more of like, this is what I thought about it. Like, I know you guys like more about this. And like, same thing with this podcast too. It's like, you are clearly like, I would consider you a bigger reader than me. And that's like, not like and all the people in these comments, like these guys are like, you're in the weeds, right? So I just approach it's like, this is my thoughts about it. And you can't disagree, but it's like, it's hard for me to feel like unsure about my own opinions. Cause I'm not trying to make this is the greatest fantasy book. Cause that's where I start to, because every time it's like, these are the top 10 fantasy books that came out. And it's like, or were they really though? Like, or did you just only read 10 books? Like, and I get it. Like you said, like it's a great way for people to find new books. It's probably the easiest way to find a lot of books in a short amount of time. And if you get a YouTuber who makes them super engaging, it's like very dynamic in its editing. It gets a lot of views. Everyone's happy. It's just not, I just don't feel you can't be the judge of top 10 anything. It's like my top 10. That's fine. It's like the top 10. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, but the best 10 fantasy books ever is a really clickable title, man.
Of course it is, man. It's not all about the money, okay?
Listen, sometimes I look at BookTube and I'm like, man, this has become like every other space in YouTube. And then I go and look at like golf YouTube and I'm like, oh my God, it's so much worse. Like it is so one secret to unlock scratch golf. It's like so bad. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe BookTube is still really good. Maybe BookTube is just
it's not a BookTube problem. It's a social media problem.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't really have a problem with lists necessarily. I mean, no. I agree with what you're saying. But I still think that curation of books I don't know if people actually care about where they're ranked. I think they just want to hear titles of books that they haven't heard before. Part of my thing is like, I like finding diamonds in the rough. I like, things that have been forgotten in the past. Unfortunately, though, I get a lot of comments being like, thank you for covering this. This is something that I've always wanted to read, or maybe they're like, I've never heard of this. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about the same 5 series. And that's awesome. And I feel like a lot of people say that that's what they want, but it does appear to me that the majority of viewership or readership really like to stick to like the big names like R.F. Kuang and Sanderson and whoever else that it might be. You're reading Poppy War right now, right?
I am. Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm about 75% of the way through. I did not know how popular this series was. Insanely
popular.
Yeah, I did not know that. It was and that's the thing too. I feel like sometimes I live in a cave because I don't watch a lot of like. And when I started, and this is going to be, I'll bring it back. When I started like reading fantasy, I was all over those top 10 videos. So like, I'm not trying to diss on them. It's where I got my start. It just got to a certain point where like your TBR is so long that like, I don't need new titles. I'm not looking for them. So I don't need to watch those because I've been out of the game so long. Like I got my Mistborn rec like however long ago, and like I'm good. I figured it out from there. My friends were reading, like I saw on Goodreads, they were both reading Poppy War at the same time. I'm like, hey, let me in on that. So then I just like, I started reading it. I caught up to them. So I didn't know it was that popular. So I don't really know what the sentiment is. I think that it's getting worse as I read it. Personally.
Interesting. So I didn't really like book 1 much, but I really like book 2.
Okay. So we have it reversed. Maybe it'll come back around. I thought that the conversations that were being had about like finding like your inner peace and spirituality and like not using that for bad. I'm like, this is going in an interesting direction. And then it was just like, boom, hard cut. This is fantasy and this is a war.
Yeah.
I went into this book completely blind. I did not know what it was about at all. Maybe that plays into it. I'm walking into something completely blind, which is fun every once in a while to do. I think it's fine right now. I'm liking it less though. I think switching to a mostly new cast of characters in the second part or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's not sitting super well with me, but I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm going to finish it easily. So.
Yeah. I just felt as if it wasn't all that well written. If I'm being honest, I really didn't enjoy much of the writing. There were aspects in book 1 that were interesting enough for me to continue, and I read all 3. And book 2, I still stand by that I really liked book 2. And then book 3 is one of the weirdest endings just overall. There are actually pieces of the ending that I really like, but I think as a wrap up book for it, it almost feels lackluster, I guess, in some ways. But I'll be excited to hear your thoughts once you're totally done with it and see if you are going to continue. Reading with Rebecca Nicole, which you guys should check out her channel. It's excellent. She says people are on Booktube because they want to talk about books with people. It is hard to talk about books with people if you haven't read the same books, which causes people to read the big names. 100%. And there's FOMO, right? I mean, you just said this, Owen. You saw 2 of your friends on Goodreads, and you're like, well, I want to read it. Mm-hmm. I want to be a part of this. For sure. I don't think FOMO is necessarily a bad thing. I think at least in reading, there's nothing wrong with finding community and reading popular stuff. I'm not dissing anyone that reads popular stuff, but I read popular stuff all the time. You know, The Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite series. How boring could I have been? I wish I was a hipster and had like some random series. Like I'm going to read Rune Lords here soon, and I hope that it becomes my favorite series, but most likely it'll remain A Song of Ice and Fire. And that makes me basic. So I'm not dissing at all on people who like popular things. It's just that I get an influx of comments of people like, I'm tired of hearing all the same stuff. And then like, I'm like, well, what about this? And they're like, nah, I'm not going to watch that. I'm like, well, do you want the random recommendations, or do you really just want Malazan, Stormlight, A Song of Ice and Fire?
Yeah. It's a tough balance for sure. And I, to be clear, like I wouldn't say like I read a lot of like the biggest, I don't know, because it's confusing though, because I feel like a lot of the videos I've recommended, a lot of the channels that I interact with are fantasy channels as well. But like the fact that like Poppy War goes under my radar, like what are you doing? Like you're not really in this space. And there's a lot of like big fantasy series that like I see everybody talking about that I'm not really familiar with, not really super interested in. But that's not to say I'm reading like super niche stuff, right? Like I'm reading the Colleen Hoover, I'm reading the Sarah J. Maas, I'm reading like the Fourth Wing books, and it's just because I'm prioritizing like my friends that I see at work. It's like, oh, you're reading Fourth Wing. It's like, okay, I read a lot of fantasy books. Like I'll jump in and see what the hype is all about. And I find it like a lot of the times, like you have like the fantasy niche where it's like, oh, like I only read Sanderson and like I'm like looked down upon, right? But Fourth Wing's the real trash, right? And then you read Fourth Wing and it's like, yeah, it's got some issues with it, but like, it's also like, I don't know. I think it's interesting reading the very, very popular books that people love to hate on for that engagement. It's like, oh, what's the fantasy for the normies or whatever. But no, nothing wrong against reading what's popular, and even popular, like mainstream popular. That's where I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And it's, I don't know. I forget what my point was, but I read a lot of mainstream stuff, like a lot of it. So.
Yeah, in no way, do I look down on people that read just popular things or stick to that. I think that's cool. I think that's actually fair. That's how most people read. Most people read one author. There are millions of dudes in their 60s that have only read Tom Clancy. Like that is a very real thing. Just as we could say that with what is that lady's name? She has written so many books. They had to have tied her down to the typewriter. I'm trying to remember. She had a year one book. Someone's going to mention in the chat. Someone's got to help me out here. I can't remember. Nora Roberts. There are people who just read Nora Roberts, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally cool. With me. One of the things that you mentioned, though, is something that I've been harping on, and I'm going to continue to harp on it, is how there's always something beneath you, right? Like, we're being picked on by the lit fit crowd in fantasy, but the real trash is Sarah J. Maas, or the real trash is Fourth Wing, or pick random romance. And it's like this weird thing where, like, I think that there's a huge lack of self-awareness.
It's atrocious. It is.
Yes.
It really is.
And it's like, read everything. Like, you read literally everything.
Well, and it's partly, like I said, it's partly because like people I know read it, but it's also like I want to see like I have a little bit of FOMO as well. Like, I want to see what people are talking about, and I have a thing against, like, and I said this before, I have a thing against hate reading. I have a thing against like hate reviews. I really don't see any value in them. And that's like a hot take maybe, because I know people love to watch them. It's really fun to see it rant. And like, I rant occasionally, but I try not to delve into that, because like, I found that like most of the time, the super mainstream stuff that everyone's like crapping on, it's like, it's absolute garbage tier book. It's okay at worst. Like, it's popular because it's a book. Like, it's not like horribly written. There's not like grammatical errors. Like, it's a New York Times #1 bestseller. Like, it's a properly written book. Maybe it's just not for you. And all of those big books I mentioned, like Court of Thorns and Roses, Fourth Wing, there were parts that I genuinely did enjoy about those books. And I think that were good, even fantasy concepts. But for the most part, they're just like average to me. Like, I don't feel super strongly about them. So I think all this like manufactured hate about them, it's just disingenuous. And like, you watch the hate reviews too, and this is the thing that really grinds my gears. Okay, we're starting to get into rant mode a little bit. When you watch a hate review and it's just like them reading the plot of the book sarcastically, it makes my head explode. Like, I saw a review of Fourth Wing that's like, and then she gets a dragon. That could have been like 14 different fantasy books that you claim to love, and you just read it sarcastically, and everyone's like, yeah, sounds horrible. It's like, can you not have any like respect for like the hobby that you enjoy, that you can maybe give people the benefit of the doubt that they like what they like? Like, it's just ridiculous to me.
I think you can make anything sound stupid and illogical in a certain tone, and if you nitpick at anything, you can pull strings apart.
Just say it sarcastically, and all of a sudden it's the worst thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, and if you need any proof of this, go look up like what you would go look up what your favorite, what you would consider like across the board classic. Like for you said To Kill a Mockingbird, right? And go read some reviews of hate on it, and you will see people just taking it, very, very out of context or whatever it might be. My point is that you can make anything sound bad. Now, hate can be pretty entertaining.
It's for sure entertaining. Like, don't get me wrong.
There's a line where it crosses into like performative, which I'm okay with. A little bit of performance, after all, especially what we do, it's entertainment, right? That's why I have all these shitty bits that I do. But there are times where it feels like it becomes like something that the person leans on, right? And it's like they're known for the hate. And then that's whenever I start to go, well, it's the same thing if a reviewer just loves everything, everything's a 5-star. How much does that really mean? You got to have some variance in there. However, that's not really how the internet works. The internet works on best or worst. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. And like, what I'm trying to like prove too is like, you could be passionate and like fired up about something, but I feel like there's also, you can make good points while you're doing that. Like, you don't just have to like be angry and that's the entire bit. Like, I don't know, like critique something meaningful about it that's actually smart and just say it in an entertaining way, and you get the best of both worlds. I mean, just like,
well, that's harder to do. And
that's I guess that's the gist of it there. But,
it's a little harder to do. I don't mind a good rant or a rave or whatever, but I do dislike whenever people damn an entire audience. This happens with Sarah J. Maas readers, right? Like, you don't know how to read, you're dumb. This also happens with, for instance, R. Scott Baker, extremely controversial author because of the way that he writes, and also just he's tackling some extremely difficult things, and to some success and some failure. You know, I can hear arguments on both sides of his.
Is it just like content, like what he's writing?
Yeah, it's
about
content. So to give you an idea, and this is kind
Yeah.
of the problem, is that he wrote that in a time where the male gaze was extraordinarily heavy in fantasy.
Right.
And his
Yeah.
idea was, I will write a series with, you know, a lot of abuse and a lot of misogyny, and I'm going to make it so over the top that I want the people who like male gaze to feel uncomfortable while reading it, almost like an enlightening moment. Now, the problem with that, Owen, is there was still a subsection of people who went, hell yeah, brother, this is awesome. You know, and it was like, oh no. So to varying levels of success, right? And but also and it's not just that, it's not the whole idea of the series, but there is also a lot of talk about free will and determinism and things like that. So in general, it's a bit of a polarizing series, but a lot of people just list anyone who likes the series as either edgelord or whatever else. You know what I mean? So I'm not a huge fan of whenever those rants or hate reviews turn into damning an entire group of people or readership. That bothers me quite a bit. And to be honest, I just stopped watching those people. I just won't read them or watch them anymore.
And also to say, like, it's the very, very small minority that would make like these base level kind of hate reviews.
Sure. Yeah.
Most people that have a following at least have some idea of what they're talking about. But it's just like the ones that like really blow up and it's like a channel that's like not very many big videos, you know, they're just spewing some absolute vile stuff. And I don't know. It's just, I can't stand it. I really can't.
I don't think discourse has gotten much better on the internet in the last few years. I think season 8 of Game of Thrones broke a lot of people. House of the Dragon House of Dragon season 2 just wrapped up, and are
you caught up on House of Dragon?
I am, and I was positive on it. I think the budget cut was monstrous what they did to them. I think
I actually caught up last night, if you believe it.
So what did you think of the season?
I don't. I'm pretty neutral on it. I really, really like season 1. I saw a lot of the hate reviews before I watched season 2, and I thought a lot of them, I did not resonate with a lot of the complaints at all. But I did think that there was like, I agree with you with like the budget. It just felt like there wasn't a lot going on. I think the best complaint that people have, which I don't necessarily know if I felt this way, was that it was boring. I thought it was certainly slower and not as much happened. I wouldn't say I was bored though, but I think that's the most like the complaint that resonates with me the most. But overall, I was pretty positive on it. I think I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it just a little bit less than season 1, even though there are some things about season 2 that I liked more than season 1. But if you were to go on the internet and just full sell like buy into the Reddit or Twitter opinion,
no,
I mean they are saying that this is worse than season 8. Like I actually saw people asking for D&D comeback, and I'm like, and this is where I actually stepped away because I was like, and actually Benjamin has a great point. He says, I gave up talking about popular things I dislike. Can be a little hard to get a good faith discussion. Well, I feel like I've given up on talking about popular things I like because if it's at all against, you know, kind of the grain, then it can be very difficult. But I was just reading that and I felt like I was in a different world or watching something different. Like
that's exactly how I feel. Yeah.
There are problems, but not to the level of you know season 8. And Key said, are you going to talk about Gurm taking shots on his blog? I talked about it over on Bend the Knee. Honestly, I was on the Game of Thrones tour the day that happened, and it was I was having such an amazing day with just people who really enjoy the book series and the TV show. Just like legitimately like a beautiful day. Like it was amazing. And I open up my phone and I'm seeing like the world explode, and 80 people have sent me in and they're like, dude, George hates House of the Dragon. And I'm like,
and I haven't read Fire and Blood, but like to my knowledge, his complaints were like they took a thing out that'll like domino effect, and like he doesn't know why they did it. That's like his main complaint, right? Or did I miss something else?
Yes, he was. I mean, George was kind of talking about the butterfly effect. And this is only one. And the big thing is this is just the surface of things that he has complaints about. But this is what he started with, and it was basically like Maylor, you know, whether or not he should have been included. Yada. I won't get into spoiler territory, but a character was excluded. I'm very curious how they handle it. But the issue with George's post is that he is coming at it from an angle that there is zero possibility of this adaptation being a good TV show without following exactly what he wanted, which I just don't think that's true. I think that you can still make a good adaptation with changing things. Like, we have to see what they do and then judge it. I refuse to damn any show until I watch it. I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, season 2 Rings of Power sucks. And I'm like, did you watch it? I'm like, no. And I'm like, then how can you say it sucks, dude? Like, you won't catch me saying that as if I haven't watched it.
The Reddit about House of Dragon season 2 is just horrendous. And like, I think like it was like a recommended subreddit. Like, you know how like they separate out like the Team Black, Team Green, to like the subreddits. I thought it was literally like a meme that like, oh, we're going to hate on Rhaenyra's character in the Green subreddit. But like, they genuinely think that that's like a criticism. It's like, oh, she's too like feminist or something. And I'm like, what has happened in this show? And I watched it and like nothing happened that was like particularly of note. And these people are just so like, they get one argument and it's just like, that's my thing. That's my complaint that I'll say forever. And I'll just say, like, as like a wrap up of like this, like, I think this show's a good example. I think going back to like the book conversation, like what these people need to realize, it's more fun to approach something with people love something. You want to see what the hype is about. Try to find what's good about it, even if it's not for you. I promise you, you'll have more fun. Like, read a romantasy, right? And try to see like what's good about it. And you'll end up walking away with something that you like about it, and you'll have a better time, even if the book was just okay at the end of the day. And I think you could do the same thing with House of Dragon season 2. There's plenty to love about that season.
Yeah, I also just think, and Lucas, you're right. They get caught up, like, the mob mentality is very strong. Again, I'm not saying it's perfect. I had me and my buddy Matt, we do Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast, and we have reviews saying that we're HBO shills, and then we have ones that saying that we're absolute haters, snobby book readers. Like, we're somewhere, you know, just having a nuanced take about every episode was not what people wanted. To the point where, you know, you're getting threats in the comments, and you're just like, these people have lost their ever-loving minds. Like, this is not. I just think that the internet discourse around most popular things is completely broken, and it's just not even really worth people's time. I think that for me, as someone who does content around media or whatever, like, it is my responsibility, at least I take it as my responsibility, to try to see it from other people's eyes. And
exactly,
it maybe not everyone has to do that. Like, I don't think everyone has that responsibility, but I put it upon myself, not just because I think it's a good thing to do and to show kind of respect for the varied type of readership that comes to this channel, but also it just makes me a better person. I think, like, being able to walk in someone else's shoes for a little bit. And sometimes I come away and go, you know, I didn't really like that book, but I see what other people got into it. And it gives me an appreciation for those people, I think.
Yeah. And really, like, this, like, you just can't get in the weeds, like, with the internet, man. Like, you're not going to please anyone, and someone's always going to have the extreme opinion one way or another. So, like, it's not really about getting into that and settling that debate. It's just about, like, as a reviewer, like, I'm completely with you. It's like, my only strong opinion is that you shouldn't have like extraordinarily strong opinions, I guess, like, one way or another. It's just, in terms of like what other people enjoy, I guess.
Yeah, I also think that, you know, it's fine if you have conviction in whatever you're doing, as long as, you know, you're ready to, in good faith, defend yourself or whatever. But it can be tough, and there's not a perfect way of doing it. Do you, when you read, do you go into it knowing what books you're going to review? Because, like, you don't review every book you read, right?
No.
So when do you know you're going to do a review?
I only don't review books that I feel like I can't say anything of value about. And that's not, if I have a great complaint about a book that I think that's fair, I'll do a review on it and I'll explain my thought process. If I read a book that I'm like super, super neutral on, I won't do a review. Because like, if I just say like, oh, it was all right, nothing really grabbed me, won't continue the series, I'm inclined not to just say anything, because it's not fun for me to make. If I have to like think about what I have to say, it's just not a video that I want to make. And that's really the thing too. It's like, I try to review all the books that I read, but it's mostly like, this is my outlet to talk about the things that I read, because I'm reading a lot of books that I don't know anybody that's reading them. So if I don't have anything to say, like, I don't need to say anything, I feel like. So yeah, so it's really only my right down the middle books, or I'm reading like a finance nonfiction book, like about like retiring early or something. It's like, I don't need, like, what am I don't need to be talking about
No,
this.
I want that review actually. Total money makeover.
Yeah, I just been with finance channel. I heard they get great cash.
The ad revenue shares better or something.
CRM or whatever.
I don't know all the acronyms.
I hear it's great. We got to get into that.
Do you rate your books? Like, do you have a Goodreads? Do you put some star ratings on them, or do you just kind of let them be what they are?
I do. It's completely nonsensical though. I don't rate them in reviews just because I feel like every system is like subjective. It's not really super helpful. And you can usually tell like what I think of a book with just what I'm saying. On Goodreads, I used to get, my friends would complain, it's like, Owen, every book you read is 5 stars, like the perfect book you've ever read. I'm like, that's not really how I think about a 5-star. But now I've kind of brought it back where it's like 4 stars, my like average, 3 stars if like I kind of didn't like it. So I'm very, very generous with my star ratings because it really doesn't mean anything to me.
I love that for you. I think that's fantastic. I started rating books a little bit more to a scale, and I was having fun doing it. But without people understanding what that scale is, people will take like a 3-star to be like, he hated it. And it's like, and then dealing with that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stop putting star ratings because I don't actually.
Then you'd have to explain your scale every time you gave it. Like it's.
Yeah. And ultimately I don't really care too much about it. It's like, you know, you can tell in a wrap up, which books kind of connected with me, whether or not I like them. You know, I'll usually share that, obviously, like, hey, I really love this book, or it was okay. I kind of do the Steam rating, you know, the video game platform. I go from like mostly positive, the very positive, overwhelmingly positive scale, then also reverse. That seems like the best way of going about it for myself. There's a book that you're reading that you're going to have to make a video on, because I don't know anyone that's read it that just went meh and moved on, which is A Little Life. That book is one of the most exhausting books. You want to talk about internet discourse? Oh my God. It is. Yeah. Even the cover is controversial, which I did not know until after I read it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a famous piece of art from what I understand. I hope I'm not
stolen.
No,
art?
I don't think it's stolen, but it was a controversial piece of art, I believe, at the time or something. It's very odd. It's just one of those books. Hopefully I'm not spreading misinformation about the cover, but it's just one of those books, dude. Like when you read it, you'll have an opinion. And there were times where I thought that maybe this book was amazing. And then there were times where I thought this book was like 1 star and everything in between. And I was just like, once I puked out my thoughts about it, I was done. But funny enough, I went to jiu-jitsu and a guy had found my channel and he comes up, he goes, "Hey, A Little Life." And I was like, "Oh no." Oh no. And he's like, "I loved it. And you were definitely not super thrilled with it by the time you finished it." And we kind of had an interesting conversation, which was nice, you know, in real life, having a pretty like balanced conversation. And he's a pretty smart guy. So it was cool kind of hearing his thoughts about it. He almost made me want to kind of reconsider like some of my thoughts on it, but I would love to hear your thoughts whenever you're done with it.
This is another example. Like this was like, I was in Seattle a couple of weeks ago and I was in a bookstore and I saw this there and I'm like, I'm just going to buy a book. Know nothing about it. Going in completely blind, which is again, something I encourage. Didn't know it was so controversial. I'm excited for it now.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about like some of the way the author goes about things and their care around those things, but ultimately it's a book that you will have an opinion about one way or the other, and it's something that people will have an opinion about your opinion no matter what it is.
Good.
Noelle has it perfect though. She said A Little Life is one of my favorite books ever, but I definitely see why someone wouldn't like it, which is, I think, the right way of going about it. And you're right. The dude on the cover does look like James Franco.
Yeah, I see it.
And this is it. Key said the cover is of a man having an orgasm, which is true. That's the piece. I
see it.
It's not how I do it, but like
I'm assuming it's controversial because like that's not what the book is about.
Nah,
or maybe it is.
Somewhat.
Okay, well, color me intrigued.
So I'm very curious. We kind of talked about top 10s. We talked about like the way you go about things. Is there something, especially, you know, being around the theater scene and everything, is there something that you've always wanted to see in the book section of YouTube that you're waiting for someone to do? Like, why doesn't someone do this? Because you and I think, are alike in the idea that we have ideas, but we don't want to take the time to do them necessarily, because we do a certain thing and we're good at that and we stay there. So is there something that you've always been like, I wish BookTube would go this way or try this?
That's a great question. In terms of like types of videos, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, types of videos, approach to the videos, anything.
Well, I think like what we were talking about earlier, it's like, that's just what I feel about BookTube. Not to say like the way that we do content is about books is like the best way to do it. I just feel like it's more genuine. And like, I don't watch a lot of BookTube, but like ever since you reached out genuine, I do, like, you are in my rotation. So congratulations. Congratulations. But it's like you, and then like a couple others, it's like, I could tell you're just talking about it. And I like channels where it's just like, you're a normal person, you have an opinion, like you're not trying to approach this from like a lecture standpoint. And even the people that have like an educational background, they're still super friendly about it. And like, they're actually trying to just be helpful. It's just the vibe of the person. I don't like, I hope it continues to go, I guess it's going towards the bad thing. The social mediaification, like the clicks, the loud, the disingenuous of it all, like the influencer part, it's not what I prefer, because you lose like the passion of like what you're talking about. So that's just a general thing. In terms of like great, awesome series ideas or video ideas, I don't know. I don't have any great ideas.
I'm sure you do. You just can't think of them on the spot.
Well, what's yours? You putting me on the spot?
Oh shit. Well, actually, I can say this now because someone's already done it. But I really wanted to be the street interviewer of BookTube. That was kind of my big idea. I bought equipment for it and I was going to do it. And this is the year I was going to start hitting up some cons and stuff and trying to do that. But there's a channel and I can't remember the guy's name. Maybe Ian is his name. He has long hair. I think he lives in Utah. He has done this. He's went around and said, tell me your favorite book with a sign, and people come up to him in the streets and like, oh, I love this book. I think that is like one of the most like beautiful interactions you can have with somebody. It's just like inviting them to share that passion that you talked about earlier. Yeah. Ian, Gubelli, is that how you say it? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. I know he's a huge fan of the channel. I'm just kidding. He doesn't know I exist. But I had been sitting on this idea, Owen, for so long. And my friend Murphy kept telling me, like, you need to get out there. You need to do it. Just try it. Just start small. Go to your library. And I was like, I'll do it one day. And then I saw this guy do it. And I was like, well, at least I don't have to worry about doing it anymore because someone's already done it.
At least it was a good idea. There's a silver
lining. Was such a good idea. Such a good idea. His idea was actually better than mine, though, because I was just going to walk up to random people and be like, hey, tell me your favorite book. Like, what's the last book you read? What do you think about banning books? And then he was smarter. He made it way less awkward. He held a sign saying, tell me about your favorite book.
Like come up to me and
And I'm like, I'm glad he did it because honestly, it's probably better that way. Like he clearly had a better idea anyways. So, maybe I could workshop some ideas. Yeah. I am considering changing the way I do things here going into the new year. I haven't really talked about that. I've hinted at it, but I haven't really talked much about it. But I feel like
scoop, perhaps
a little bit of scooperino here. I am considering moving every single thing I do to a live stream, and I am not just thinking of it as it's easier because there's no editing, but making it a part of this show. So on my channel, I do wrap ups right at the end where I go over my reads, and then I do a Patreon pick of the month, and people love it. And I love making those videos. However, I have really considered maybe Chatting with Nuts expanding to being more than just having a guest and featuring my lovely wife, Kelsey, more on the channel to get what she's reading. And I was just thinking about maybe taking those wrap ups and sticking them as a segment once a month in a Chatting with Nuts that's a little bit more intimate, maybe a little bit shorter. And then even if I wanted to, I could actually clip that section and then just upload the video like that. But I know people don't like change, so I worry how people.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a piece of advice. Even if you're not live, you don't have to edit your videos. I only edit my videos if I like sneeze in the middle of like my 30-minute Malazan reread video, and I'm like, I cannot be sneezing on camera. Then I'll edit it. I'm all uncut. it's just I'm yapping. And that's why I say like did he really think that through? No. Like I put the camera down. I don't even know what my opinions are to the book until I've already said it. And I'm like, that was a pretty good one. Upload. That's literally it. And maybe that's what you say farm to table, but like I promise you it's not a creative decision. It's just pure laziness.
I love it. I think it's just being the best. And also I got to give Bee's Knees, who was in chat earlier. She is the one that coined the phrase farm to table booktube. And when she described you as that, I was like, oh, beautiful, beautiful.
I do like that.
It's a wonderful phrase. Shelf Unstable says, release the sneeze cut. And HR says, what if you forget a sneeze and it's a long video? Oh,
it might have happened. I don't know. I don't always watch the videos either after I post them. Like anything could happen, truly.
Yeah, and I like that about lives, by the way. I like the fact that anything can happen. Sometimes things are organic, they build on themselves, they become a big
go back to your idea too. I mean, I got a lot of respect for you trying to go all live. I mean, that's hard to do. Like, at least me, if I say something, I guess I'm live right now, but like if I said something like really unhinged, like I could always like, all right, we're just not gonna say that. But like
I'm gonna clip hey, 83 episodes and I haven't said anything terrible yet. Well, I mean, I've said some terrible stuff, but like nothing that was over the top where it ended me. But for me, the thing about the challenge of live is making it engaging, because honestly, I don't think anyone wants to watch a 2 to 3 hour live show. None of us would say, if someone said, hey, you want to watch a live stream of a book channel for 2 hours? They'd be like, absolutely not. I'd rather read. I'd rather do anything. I'd rather do my taxes. So my challenge to myself is, how do I make this engaging? How do I bring the most out of my guest, making them feel comfortable, but not just the run of the mill stuff? And the big thing, and this is the challenge, is that I have so many more ideas for this live format that will require a lot of coordination and other technology and more equipment. And I mean, really fleshing this out to make it feel big, like production, but not editing production, but like other things, right? Multiple camera angles, having Kelsey here as a producer, these type of things.
Well, there's a really great film podcast. I don't listen to them as much anymore. I think it's Pulp Kitchen. So they do a lot of good. I love their discussions. Like two guys there, and if they talk about the movies they've seen and stuff. But then they do like little games in between. It's like, name the movie based on these actors. And then they use that as like their TikTok content and stuff like that. Like they cut the games out. But like, yeah, like whatever we did today, like I make faces for the books and stuff. Like you could make this 2 hour show, like you said. I think that's a great idea. And just, if you want an extra video, you just cut it out.
Yeah. And if I was smart and I cared about growth, I would do those clips. And then I mean, that's what Andrew Huberman did. His podcast blew up. I mean, he made the blueprint of doing those type of things.
Yeah.
Like, it is 100% the way of doing things. I just don't care that much about, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And that's like right.
I'm having fun.
Exactly.
You know?
And the moment it starts to become too much like a 9-to-5 work job, like that's when like you got to step back and like, what's the easiest way I can do this? That's the most fun.
Yeah, this is the only thing in life where I feel like I'm making maybe a slight difference, or at least providing an avenue for other people to have a better experience with their day. And that is all I ever want from this, and to have some fun. Dude, I have met so many people through this. It is insane. Like I just spent a week in Dublin, Ireland with 2 people I met on the internet.
That's awesome.
And had a great time. You know, like that's incredible. And now I got to come over your way, and we need to go to a Browns game together. We got to do it.
Let's do it. Maybe once in a generation win for them, perhaps.
I would. Hopefully number 4 is out. Hopefully he's gone.
Yeah. No, that'd be fun. That'd be awesome. This is like kind of like, I'm excited for this for me because there's a siren going on. It's on my end, just in case you're listening.
They found the bodies that you buried.
You weren't supposed to mention that, Jimmy. I gotta go. I'm kidding. But what was I gonna say? This is like my first foray, and I feel like because you're so well connected, and like no one knows who I am, so like now I'm here, and like people will know me. So,
yeah,
that's cool.
the fact you need about 100,000 more subscribers, because like to
Okay,
me,
well, that's
I love I find people who are raw and authentic to be like what I remember YouTube being, how much I love it. Like Brian Lee Durfee's another guy, author, booktuber. So happy, by the way, BLD's home and healthy. He had a horrible health incident. They left him in the hospital for like months. And we're so glad that he's feeling better. But like, he's always one of my examples, you know, of people who are just raw and themselves, and they're fun and still providing good information and stuff like this. So I think what you do over on your channel is excellent. I think you have a very unique energy in the way you present yourself, that you don't really need all the editing. You know, you have a personality, and that's more important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a high compliment.
And everyone that watches this should go subscribe to Owen's channel, Toasty Towns, not grilled, but toasted, because I think he does a lot of good stuff over there. I especially like when you comment on like the nature of online discourse around books. Like, you've made a lot of topic type videos, and I always find them interesting.
Well, yeah, I like making them too, because I'm never short of an opinion. I love the sound of my own voice. But sometimes I'm like hesitant, just because like I don't want to like be feeding into like the drama, or like, man, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like the perception of that, but I do love sharing my opinion. So every once in a while, I'll just slip out.
I know what you mean, because like, of course I have opinions on the thing that I spend so much time in and doing, but there has, especially lately, like there's been a huge meta aspect of BookTube that I think is a bit cringe, perhaps.
Like what? Like what part of you? Like what are you talking about?
Like just like videos that center around BookTube. Like when we stop talking about the books. You know what I'm saying? And I love getting to know people. You know, when we talked about Ireland or your theater background, or, you know, talking about the way you make your video, that's all fine. And I don't mind that. And I don't mind a little bit of commentary. I don't mind a response video or something like this. I'm not saying that it's totally off limits, but whenever there's so much time in a row dedicated to just the like YouTube aspect of it, I think that kind of loses sight of like why we're here and what 99% of the viewers care about, which is books and what we got out of them. So every now and then I find like the meta aspect of BookTube is a little much.
Yeah, you don't want to overdo it, for sure. But every once in a while, like, it's topical. Like, some mainstream news thing will write an article about it and how it's ruining reading, and then it's like, well, is it? Is it not? And then just go on for like way too long. But I don't know.
Alex's archive says, I just want to know how to game the YouTube algorithm. Can you piss more about that, Jimmy? No.
Well, that's another thing too. It's like every once in a while I feel the overwhelming urge of greed, and I'm like, I want to make money. How can I exploit everybody to make some more YouTube money? But then it's just like, I'm not built for it. It's not that I don't care about money. I mean, hey, I do, but I don't care enough to like game the system like that. I think it kind of like takes it away. And like, even like a big thing in BookTube, I feel like, is like doing book reviews. Like some people, like some channels, like eventually stray away from that, because it's like, if you're not reading like A Little Life right now, or haven't read it, like, you're not going to watch my review of it, right? But then I also found that like those are like my videos, not that views matter, or like getting a lot of views matters, but like those are the videos that are getting views now, like the reviews I made like 2 years ago. Because when somebody reads it, they're searching up a review. And if I'm reviewing a book that not a lot of people talk about, it might be their only video about it, which is another argument for like, maybe just you don't have to read what's the mainstream stuff, or the main YouTube mainstream stuff. Because
definitely.
It's almost like always evergreen, even though it's not the most bombastic, not most clickable content. I think it's cool to be building up a library of books that I've read and I have opinions about. That's the most satisfying part for me, is like, I have a playlist of 80 books that I reviewed since I started the channel. Like 80 books, like that's not insignificant. And I'm proud of that, which is fun.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. It's like a catalog of the things that I've read and my thoughts about them. I haven't done a book review in probably about a year, or maybe a little bit more than a year now. And for me, it was more just like, one, I kind of found them stressful because I cared too much. But two, I felt like I was starting to say a lot of the same things, because there's only so many ways you can say non-spoiler thoughts. And I just felt like I needed a break to kind of recalibrate. I've been kicking around the idea of doing reviews again recently. But you know, what's funny is even not doing it for a year and a half. If you look at just like normal uploaded content, not lives, I think over 80% of my videos are still reviews. Like I stuck to reviews for like 3 straight years, I think. And I am proud of a lot of them. Some of them aren't great, but like, especially if you start at the beginning, you can see how I grew. At least I think.
Don't watch my first video.
All right, everyone's gonna watch. It's the Barbara Streisand effect. You can't tell people not to do things.
It's just very like I clearly was like, "Hey, welcome." Like I just didn't, you know what I mean? It's not horrible. It's just I didn't know what I was doing. I had no personality yet.
You hadn't found that serial killer vibe yet. You had not embraced.
I didn't find like my warm, like charming self yet. Is what you meant to say. I appreciate it.
Yes, that's actually what I meant. It was Irish for that.
Right. Yeah, but like my highest viewed video is my review of Tomorrow, which is a book that I didn't feel particularly strongly about. It just happened. I happened to post it before it blew up. But it's like that's not like my brand. Like I don't always read books like that. But it's just interesting that like what people watch nowadays. Like it's my most viewed video like being watched currently, which is weird.
You know, it's funny. That's a book that I always see. Actually, in Ireland, it was on all the front tables, and
it's
I was
super
like,
popular now.
Well, funny thing is when it's like, oh, I should watch a review of it. And guess who popped up in my YouTube search bar? You. And I watched a review and I went, I'm not going to read this. So thanks. Appreciate
You're welcome.
You saved me 19 euro or whatever it was.
Oh, so,
much appreciated. K-Fox says the first video folded laundry.
That's great.
That is great.
That's multitasking. That's very beneficial to your life.
Multi-talented, you could say.
Yeah.
Dude, look how gnarly these tan lines are. Can you see this?
Yeah. Like, where'd you get so much sun at? Certainly not Ireland.
That is true. On the golf course. Yes. Snapped a sandwich over my knee today. Have a bit of an anger problem out there on the links. Hey, Owen, it's been 2 hours on a Friday night in a city that has a lot to offer you, and you decided to come spend it not only with me, but with the audience. And I have to tell you that this is everything I hoped it would be and more. And I appreciate so much for you giving me your time and all these people here.
It was a blast. I really appreciate you having me on. It was great. I had a lot of fun.
I would love to have you back if you ever want to come back on, especially after you read Little Life. Would love to see that. And can we expect more Malazan content out of you in the future?
Yes. I'm rereading all the Book of the Fallen. It's just taking me a long time, guys. I like to do part by part videos. I did part 1 of Midnight Tides recently. It's a playlist. If you guys like the series, check them out. They're fun. I am continuing doing them though. Just give me some time. That's all.
I've been slowly rereading my way through the series out of order. In fact, I did Gardens of the Moon and now I'm reading Memories of Ice. So watching your stuff along with it has been really great. Because a lot of in this corner of fantasy booktube, pretty much everyone watches Philip Jason AP, which makes sense. AP's
Legends.
Yeah, legend. Fine. But it's always awesome to find another channel that's doing Malazan content, especially someone who's read through the series. So, folks, you should definitely check that out. You have to give Toasty Towns a subscription. I got it down in the description below. Well worth it. And I promise you all the personality you could ever ask for. And 100% guarantee of genuine thoughts and opinions from Owen. Owen, where else can people find you? You have any social media accounts you want people to follow?
Nope. Just the YouTube's fine.
That works for me, man. I always say I don't really have social media, and then I remember that I run a YouTube channel, and I'm like, oh yeah,
right.
Oh, congrats on 2K! You just hit 2,000.
Okay,
they call this is the Jimmy effect.
So when can I hit 1 million?
Well, I haven't got there yet either. I was thinking, you know, however, YouTubers like our goal this year is to hit 120,000. I thought about being like, hey guys, I'd love to hit 20,000 this year. Like but honestly, I don't really want 20,000. Like we're getting
that's a lot of people to please.
That's right. We're getting too big. I want to keep it very small and contained. And I like the audience I have now. And just the more people that come around, the more variance you get. The chance you run into a nonfiction reader, you don't want that. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Nonfiction. I know you're big fans of the channel. Oh, and thank you so much for being here tonight.
Again.
And I hope everyone goes down in the description and hits subscribe on your channel, and we'll do it again. For everyone that was attending, the third guest, the live chat, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Always great to have interaction, great questions. And until we see you next time, be good, be safe, and remember to always keep turning the page.